The vibration of my phone against the mahogany surface of my desk was the only sound in the office. It was 9:14 p.m. on a Tuesday. I wasn't working late because I had a deadline. I was working late because I didn't want to go home and face the inevitable notification that had just lit up my screen. Mom, mobile 14 missed calls. For 32 years, that screen would have triggered a Pavlovian response. My heart rate would spike, my stomach would not, and my brain would immediately begin calculating how much liquid cash I had in my savings account. I would answer. I would listen to the frantic, hyperventilating voice on the other end. I would ask how much, and then I would fix it. That was my role. I was the fixer, the ATM, the rock, the good son. But tonight, I just watched the phone buzz. It vibrated its way toward the edge of the desk, dangerously close to falling off. I took a sip of lukewarm coffee and let it fall. The thud against the carpeted floor was the most satisfying sound I had heard in a decade. It was the sound of a bridge collapsing, but for the first time, I wasn't the one standing underneath it trying to hold up the debris. I was standing on the shore, watching it burn. To understand why I let the phone drop, you have to understand the architecture of my family. It wasn't built on love or mutual respect. It was built on a very specific, unspoken economy of crisis. My parents, Linda and Gary, were not bad people in the traditional villainous sense. They didn't beat us. They didn't starve us. They just refused to inhabit reality. They lived in a world where consequences were things that happened to other people, and math was a suggestion rather than a law. I have 2 siblings. There is Kyle, my older brother by 2 years, and Sarah, my younger sister by 5. Kyle is the dreamer, the golden boy, the one with the $1 million smile and the 10-cent work ethic. Sarah is the baby, the perpetual victim of circumstance, the one who feels things deeply, and therefore cannot be expected to hold down a job that requires waking up before noon. And then there is me, David, the middle child, the one who was quiet, the one who got good grades not because I wanted praise, but because I realized early on that good grades meant scholarships, and scholarships meant escape. Or so I thought. The conditioning started young. I remember being 12 years old. Kyle had thrown a baseball through the neighbor's greenhouse window. It was an accident, sure, but Kyle had been told specifically not to play near there. The neighbor, Mr. Henderson, was furious. He came pounding on our door, demanding payment for the imported glass. My father was at work. My mother was crying in the kitchen, overwhelmed by the confrontation. Kyle was hiding in his room. My mother looked at me. I was sitting at the table doing math homework. "David," she sobbed. "Go talk to him. You're so sensible. Explain that we'll pay him next week. Please. I can't handle the yelling." So I did. I was 12. I walked out to the porch, looked a 60-year-old man in the eye, and negotiated a payment plan for a window I didn't break. I offered to mow his lawn for a month to work off the debt. Mr. Henderson accepted. When I came back inside, my mother hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. "You saved us," she whispered. "You're the reliable one, David. I don't know what we'd do without you." That was the drug. Validation. Being the hero. It felt good, initially. It felt like I had value. I didn't realize that by accepting the title of reliable one, I was actually signing a lifelong contract to be the used one. Fast forward to my 20s. I graduated with a degree in finance. I landed a junior analyst position at a mid-sized firm and worked 80-hour weeks to climb the ladder. I lived in a studio apartment the size of a shoebox, ate instant noodles, and saved every penny. I drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic. I was building a foundation. My family, meanwhile, was building a house of cards. Kyle had decided college wasn't for him. He was an entrepreneur. In our family, that meant he had a new scheme every 6 months that required seed capital. First, it was a custom t-shirt business. My parents raided their 401k to give him $20,000. The shirts were low quality, the designs were stolen, and he lost interest 3 months in. Then it was a drop-shipping empire. Then a mobile dog grooming service. He is allergic to dogs. Sarah went to a private liberal arts college to study interpretive dance. My parents took out a second mortgage to pay the tuition because Sarah is an artist, David. We have to nurture her spirit. I watched this from the sidelines. I tried to warn them. I sat my father down at the kitchen table with spreadsheets. I showed him the interest rates on the second mortgage. I showed him that Kyle's business plans had no market research. "You worry too much, David," my father said, waving a hand dismissively. "Family helps family. When you make it big, you'll help us too. That's how it works." I didn't argue. I just went back to work. The first major crack in my resolve happened 3 years ago. I had just been promoted to senior manager. I was finally making good money, 6 figures, solid bonus structure. I had saved enough for a down payment on a modest house. I was excited. I called my mother to tell her the news. "That's wonderful, honey," she said. "Actually, it's perfect timing. We need to talk." My stomach dropped. "About what?" "It's Kyle. He's in a bit of a jam. He met a girl, you know, that nice girl Jessica? Well, they want to get married. But Kyle put the deposit for the venue on his credit card, and the card got declined for the rest of the payments, and now they're going to lose the date unless they come up with $10,000 by Friday." "Mom," I said, gripping the phone. "I just told you I'm buying a house. I need my liquid cash for closing costs." "David," her voice shifted instantly from celebratory to wounded. "It's your brother's wedding. It's the most important day of his life. You can buy a house anytime. Kyle only gets married once." "He's been dating her for 4 months," I pointed out. "Don't be cynical. It's true love. Look, just loan him the money. He'll pay you back from the wedding gifts. We all know Kyle isn't great with money, but he's your brother. Would you really let his big day be ruined over money?" I hesitated. That was my fatal flaw. I hesitated. "Please, David," she whispered. "For me? I can't bear to see him so heartbroken." I wired the money. Kyle got married. It was a lavish affair. Open bar, live band, 3-course meal. I sat at the siblings' table, watching Kyle laugh and drink champagne, knowing my down payment was paying for the bubbles in his glass. He did not pay me back from the wedding gifts. He told me they decided to use the gift money for a honeymoon in Bali because Jessica has never been out of the country, and we needed to start our marriage on a high note. I didn't buy my house that year. I stayed in the shoebox. Over the next 3 years, the requests accelerated. It wasn't just big things. It was a constant erosion of my boundaries. Sarah's car broke down. "David, can you just cover the repair? She can't get to auditions without a car." Dad's blood pressure medication copay went up. "David, the pharmacy is asking for $200. Can you Venmo it?" Mom wanted to host Christmas, but didn't have the budget for the prime rib. "David, you like prime rib, don't you? Just pick it up on your way over." I became the silent partner in their lives. I paid for cell phone plans. I paid for insurance premiums. I paid for emergency vet bills for dogs I didn't own. I kept a ledger in my head, a running tally of what they owed me. It was over $60,000. But I never asked for it back. I knew the answer would be a guilt trip about how I was obsessed with money and didn't care about family. I had a girlfriend for a while. Elena. She was smart, kind, and had a shiny spine. She watched the dynamic for 6 months and then sat me down. "They're eating you alive, David," she said. "You're not their son or their brother. You're their retirement plan and their insurance policy. If you don't stop, I can't stay. I can't build a life with someone who is already married to his parasitic family." I defended them. "They just have bad luck," I said. "They need me." "They create their own luck," Elena said. "And they don't need you. They use you." We broke up 2 weeks later after I canceled our anniversary weekend to bail Kyle out of a misunderstanding with his landlord involving 3 months of unpaid rent. Elena walked out the door, and I remember thinking she was being unreasonable. God, I was an idiot. The tipping point, the moment the reliable son died, came 2 months ago. My father had a mild heart attack. It was scary, but he recovered quickly. The doctors told him he needed to reduce stress and retire. He was 64. He had worked in sales his whole life. I assumed foolishly that he had a pension or at least Social Security lined up. I called a family meeting at my parents' house to discuss the financials of Dad's retirement. I brought my laptop. I brought spreadsheets. I was ready to help them budget their fixed income. We sat in the living room. Mom, Dad, Kyle, Sarah, and me. Okay, I started, opening a spreadsheet. Let's look at the numbers. Dad, what's the monthly payout from your pension? Dad looked at Mom. Mom looked at the floor. There isn't a pension, David, Dad mumbled. I paused. Okay. 401k. IRA. Silence. We cashed out the 401k a few years ago, Mom said, her voice small. You what? I stared at them. All of it? You had almost 300,000 in there 10 years ago. Well, Mom began, wringing her hands. We had expenses. The house needed a new roof. And then Kyle needed that investment for the crypto venture. I looked at Kyle. He was checking his phone. And Sarah needed tuition for that semester in Italy. I looked at Sarah. She was picking at a loose thread on the sofa. And, well, living is expensive, David. Mom snapped, defensive now. We helped you kids out. We invested in you. We thought. You thought what? I asked, my voice rising. That I would be the retirement fund. Well, you're doing so well. Mom said, forcing a smile. You have that big job. You have no kids. You have plenty of money. We figured we would sell this house, move into something smaller, and you could help with the difference. Just until we get settled. I closed my laptop. The sound echoed in the room. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You spent your entire life savings funding Kyle's failed businesses and Sarah's vacations, and now you expect me to pay for your retirement? It wasn't wasted. Kyle interjected. Those were legitimate business attempts. The market just wasn't ready. You bought a boat, Kyle, I said. For a fishing charter business in a landlocked state. You spent $20,000 on a boat you couldn't use. That was a pivoting strategy. Kyle yelled. Stop it. Mom cried. Stop fighting. We are a family. We help each other. David, your father is sick. He can't work. We have zero savings. We have a mortgage we can't pay. We need you to step up. It's your turn. My turn. As if I hadn't been taking my turn every single day since I was 12 years old. What exactly does step up look like? I asked. Mom took a deep breath. She had a plan. She always had a plan involving my money. Kyle found a great investment property, she said. A duplex. It's a foreclosure. A steal. If we buy it, we can live in one half, and Kyle and Jessica can live in the other. We can rent out the basement. It solves everyone's housing problem. And who is buying this duplex? I asked, though I knew the answer. We need the down payment, Mom said. And since our credit is shot, we need you to co-sign the mortgage. Just for a year or two. Until we refinance. How much? The down payment is $80,000, she said. And the renovations will be another $40,000. So, $120,000. To start. I looked around the room. I looked at my father, who wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Kyle, who looked entitled, as if this was the least I could do. I looked at Sarah, who looked bored. And I looked at my mother, who looked at me with that same expression she had when I was 12. You're the reliable one. I did the math in my head. $120,000 was nearly everything I had. It was my emergency fund, my house fund, my retirement start. If I did this, I would be back to zero. And I knew with absolute certainty that they would never refinance. I would be on the hook for the mortgage for 30 years. I would be paying for a house where Kyle lived for free while I rented a shoebox. I stood up. No, I said. The word hung in the air like a gunshot. What? Mom whispered. No. I'm not doing it. I'm not giving you $120,000. I'm not co-signing a mortgage. I'm not funding this anymore. David. Mom stood up, her face turning red. How can you be so selfish? Your father had a heart attack. We are destitute. You are destitute because you gave all your money to Kyle, I said, pointing at my brother. I am not going to set myself on fire to keep you warm anymore. I'm done. If you walk out that door, Kyle sneered, don't bother coming back. You're abandoning your family. No, Kyle, I said, picking up my laptop bag. I'm escaping it. I walked out. I drove home in silence. I blocked them all on social media. But I didn't block their numbers. Not yet. I wanted to see if they would apologize. I wanted to see if they would realize what they had done. They didn't. The texts started the next morning. Mom, I can't believe you would treat us this way. After everything we did for you. Who paid for your braces? Who drove you to soccer practice? Kyle, you think you're better than us just because you're a corporate sellout. You're pathetic. Mom is crying nonstop. Hope you're happy. Sarah, Dave, seriously? I need gas money for my audition tomorrow, and Mom says she has nothing because you cut us off. Send me $50 ASAP. I ignored them. I went to work. I focused on my spreadsheets. 2 weeks passed. The harassment escalated. They started calling me at work. I had to tell the receptionist to screen calls from anyone with my last name. They showed up at my apartment building, but luckily the doorman, a guy named Marcus who I tipped well at Christmas, told them I wasn't home even though my car was in the spot. Then came the extinction burst. In psychology, an extinction burst is when a behavior gets worse before it stops, because the subject is trying desperately to get the old reward back. It was a Friday. I got a call from an unknown number. I answered, thinking it was a client. David. It was my aunt. My mother's sister, Karen. I hadn't spoken to her in years. Aunt Karen? Is everything okay? No, David, it is not okay, she hissed. Your mother just called me from the hospital. Your father collapsed. The stress is killing him. She says it's because they're being evicted. My heart hammered. Evicted? They owned their house. Or I thought they did. What do you mean evicted? The bank is taking the house, David. Apparently, they took out a balloon mortgage 5 years ago to pay off some debts, and the balloon payment is due. They don't have it. They're going to be on the street next week. And your mother says you refuse to help. You're sitting on a pile of money and you're letting your parents become homeless. I felt the old guilt rising. The conditioning. Fix it, David. Karen, I said, forcing my voice to be steady. Did Mom tell you why they don't have the money? Because times are hard. No. Because they gave over $300,000 to Kyle for businesses that didn't exist. They funded Sarah's lifestyle. I have given them $60,000 over the last 5 years. I cannot give them another $100,000. Family is family. Karen screamed. It doesn't matter what happened. You have the means. I am not an ATM, I said. I am a person. And if Dad is in the hospital, I hope he recovers. But I am not paying the mortgage. I hung up. Then I did something I should have done years ago. I called the hospital. I asked for the nurse's station. I'm calling about my father, Gary, I said. I heard he collapsed. The nurse paused. Sir, due to HIPAA I can't give details, but I can tell you that your father was discharged an hour ago. He came in for anxiety. He was not admitted. It was a lie. A orchestrated lie to panic me into opening my checkbook. That was the moment the bridge truly collapsed. That was tonight. I sat there in my office, staring at the phone on the floor. 14 missed calls. They were desperate. The balloon payment was likely due tomorrow. They had played their cards, guilt, anger, medical faking, and I hadn't folded. I picked up the phone. I didn't unlock it. I just looked at the black screen. I realized something profound in that silence. I wasn't just saying no to the money. I was saying no to the role. I was resigning from the position of parent to my parents. I unlocked the phone. I opened my banking app. I transferred the money I had been hoarding, the money that was supposed to be their bailout, into a 12-month CD, certificate of deposit, where I couldn't touch it without a massive penalty. It was a symbolic act. The money was locked. Even if I wanted to cave, I couldn't. Then I typed a text to the family group chat. I called the hospital. I know Dad was discharged. I know about the lie. I am not paying the mortgage. I am not buying the duplex. I am not sending gas money. Do not contact me again. If you show up at my work or home, I will file a restraining order. Figure it out. I hit send. Then I blocked them. Mom, Dad, Kyle, Sarah, Aunt Karen. I sat there for a long time. I expected to feel sad. I expected to feel fear. But all I felt was a strange, hollow exhaustion. I went home. I slept for 10 hours, dreamless. The next month was a blur of legal threats and flying monkeys. Kyle sent me an email, since he was blocked on text, threatening to sue me for emotional distress and verbal contract breach, claiming I had promised to fund his business years ago. I forwarded it to a lawyer friend who laughed and sent Kyle a cease and desist letter pro bono. Mom wrote me letters. Physical, handwritten letters on stationery. They were masterpieces of manipulation. Page 1, I miss my baby boy. Page 2, I don't understand what happened to you. Page 3, how can you sleep at night knowing your brother is living in a motel? Page 4, please, just $10,000. We need to put a deposit on a rental. I didn't burn them. I kept them in a box. Evidence. Reminders. I found out through a mutual acquaintance what happened to them. The house was foreclosed on. They lost it. They had to sell almost everything inside to pay for movers. They moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a bad part of town. Mom, Dad, and Sarah. Kyle didn't move in with them. Apparently, once the money tap turned off, Jessica, his wife, realized the successful entrepreneur lifestyle was a sham. She filed for divorce 3 months after the wedding. Kyle was currently sleeping on a friend's couch, actually working, at a warehouse. It's been 6 months now. I still have moments of doubt. Christmas was hard. I spent it alone, ordering Chinese food and watching movies. I thought about them. I wondered if they were eating. I wondered if they hated me. But then I looked at my bank account. It was growing. I looked at my apartment. It was peaceful. I looked at my phone. It was silent. I met someone new recently. Her name is Maya. On our 3rd date, she talked about her family. She said, my brother is struggling right now, so I lent him $1,000. He's paying me back $50 a week, and he's actually doing it. I flinched when she said she lent him money. She noticed. Everything okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. Just family stuff. You close with your family? She asked. I took a sip of wine. No. I used to be. But I had to fire them. She laughed, thinking it was a joke. You fired your family? I did, I said. It was a hostile takeover. They wanted 100% of the shares, and I wanted to keep my assets. She looked at me with interest. Sounds like a story. It is, I said. But the ending is the best part. Oh? How does it end? I lived happily ever after, I lied. It wasn't happily ever after. Not yet. There is still guilt. There is still the phantom vibration of the phone. There is still the ache of knowing that the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally actually loved me remarkably conditionally. The condition was currency. But I am free. Last week, I drove past their old house. The bank had sold it to a young couple. They were outside, painting the front door a bright yellow. They looked happy. They looked like they were building a future. I parked down the street and watched them for a minute. I saw the guy drop his paintbrush, and the woman laughed and handed him a rag. They were a team. My phone buzzed. My heart jumped, reflexively. It was an email notification. Statement available, 12-month CD. I smiled. I put the car in gear and drove away. The rearview mirror showed the house shrinking in the distance, smaller and smaller, until it was just a speck, and then finally gone. Update, 1 year later. It feels strange to type this out, but I feel like I owe it to myself to document the aftermath. When you detonate a nuclear bomb in the center of your family life, the radiation lasts longer than the blast. I maintained no contact for exactly 8 months. It was the quietest 8 months of my life. I got a promotion at work. I started therapy. My therapist, Dr. Eris, is a blunt, no-nonsense woman who refers to my family dynamics as cannibalistic. They weren't raising you, David, she told me once. They were grooming a resource. That hit hard. But it was true. The silence broke in November. I was at the grocery store, buying ingredients for a Friendsgiving I was hosting. I was actually happy. I was debating between sweet potatoes and yams when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned around. It was Sarah. She looked different. Older. Her hair, usually dyed some vibrant, expensive color, was her natural brown and pulled back in a messy bun. She looked tired. She was wearing a waitress uniform under a heavy coat. "Dave," she said. Her voice wasn't demanding. It sounded unsure. My instinct was to run, to leave the cart and bolt. But my feet stayed planted. "Sarah," I said. I kept my hands on the cart handle, creating a barrier. "I'm not asking for money," she said quickly, holding up her hands. "I swear. I saw your car in the lot. I recognized the bumper sticker." I waited. "I'm working," she said, gesturing to her uniform. "Double shifts at the diner down the street. And I'm taking night classes. Paralegal studies." "That's good," I said. And I meant it. "How are Mom and Dad?" Sarah grimaced. "It's a nightmare, Dave. The apartment is tiny. Dad is depressed. Mom is Mom. She spends all day rewriting history. According to her, you stole their retirement money. She tells everyone who will listen that you embezzled from the family trust." "There was no family trust," I said. "I know," Sarah sighed. "I know that now. Living with them. Without you there to be the buffer. I see it. I see how they operate. Mom tried to get me to take out a student loan I didn't need so she could buy a new TV. I said no." I looked at my little sister. For the first time, she didn't look like a spoiled brat. She looked like a survivor of the same war I had fought. "And Kyle?" I asked. Sarah laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Kyle is in Arizona. He met some guy online who convinced him he could make millions in solar panel sales. He borrowed $5,000 from Dad's brother, Uncle Jerry, and skipped town. Mom still defends him. She says he's chasing his destiny." We stood there in the produce aisle for a long moment. "I miss you, Dave," Sarah said, her eyes tearing up. "Not the money. I just miss my brother. It sucks being the only sane one left in that house." This was the test. Dr. Eris had warned me about this. The Hoover maneuver. Sucking you back in with vulnerability. "I can't fix it, Sarah," I said gently. "I can't save you from them. You have to save yourself." "I know," she nodded, wiping her eyes. "I'm saving up. First and last month's rent. I'm getting out. I wanted you to know I'm trying." I reached into my pocket. I had a $20 bill. I almost handed it to her. "Just for lunch," I wanted to say. "Just a little help." I squeezed the bill in my pocket. I didn't pull it out. "I'm proud of you, Sarah," I said. "Keep working. It's worth it." She looked at my hand, knowing what I was struggling with. She gave me a sad smile. "Thanks for not giving it to me," she whispered. "I need to do this." She walked away. I didn't hear from her for another 4 months. Then, I got a postcard in the mail. No return address. Just a picture of a generic apartment complex. On the back it said, "Moved out. Got my own place. It's small and it smells like lemon pledge, but it's mine. I pay my own bills. Thank you for saying no." It forced me to say yes to myself. I put the postcard on my fridge. It is the only trophy I have from my family. As for my parents, I received a legal notice last week. My mother is suing me for filial support. Apparently, there are laws in some states that require children to support indigent parents. They are rarely enforced, and usually only when the parents are on state aid, but Mom found a lawyer sleazy enough to try. I called my lawyer. He laughed for 5 minutes straight. "Let them try," he said. "The discovery phase will be fun. We'll get to comb through 30 years of their financials. We'll get to show the court the hundreds of thousands of dollars they squandered. We'll show the checks you wrote. We'll show the boat. The vacations. The weddings." "Do it," I said. "Burn it down." So that's where I am. I am currently a defendant in a lawsuit filed by the woman who gave birth to me, because I refused to be the father to her and her husband. It should be tragic. It should be heartbreaking. But honestly, I feel invincible. Because for the first time in my life, the worst thing that could happen has already happened. They rejected me. They demonized me. They sued me. And I'm still standing. I'm still eating. I'm still sleeping. I realized that my fear wasn't about them starving. My fear was about me not being good. I had conflated goodness with compliance. I stopped being a good son. I started being a good person, to myself. If you are reading this, and you are the reliable one. If you are the one checking your bank account when the phone rings. If you are the one setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. Stop. Drop the phone. Let it hit the floor. The sound is terrifying. But the silence that follows? It's freedom. Part 2, the deposition. I didn't think I'd be writing another update, but life has a way of escalating when narcissists are involved. The lawsuit my mother filed for filial support actually moved forward. My lawyer, a shark named Harrison, told me it was a nuisance suit, designed to annoy me into settling. Mom figured I'd pay her $20,000 just to make it go away. She miscalculated. I wasn't just willing to fight, I was eager. I wanted the record. I wanted the truth inked onto legal paper. The deposition was scheduled for last Tuesday. I took the day off work. I put on my best suit. I walked into the conference room with Harrison. Mom and Dad were there. They looked older. Dad looked frail, his skin gray. Mom looked angry. She was wearing a designer scarf I recognized. I had bought it for her for Mother's Day 4 years ago. It cost $300. It looked ridiculous draped over her cheap coat. Their lawyer was a guy named Stone. He looked like he chased ambulances for cardio. The deposition began. Stone started asking me about my income, my assets, my savings. Mr. Miller, Stone asked, is it true that your annual income exceeds $150,000? Yes, I said. And is it true that you are aware your parents are currently living below the poverty line? I am aware they are living in an apartment they can afford on their Social Security, I corrected. But they are struggling, are they not? While you live in luxury. Harrison objected, but I waved him off. I live within my means, I said. Something my parents never did. Then it was Harrison's turn to question Mom. This is where the high engagement part of the story happens. Because what came out in that room was not just financial mismanagement. It was financial infidelity on a massive scale. Harrison pulled out a stack of bank records we had subpoenaed. Mrs. Miller, Harrison said, sliding a document across the table. Can you explain this withdrawal of $15,000 on August 14, 2018? Mom squinted at the paper. I don't recall. That was years ago. Let me refresh your memory, Harrison said. That was the day your son, David, transferred $15,000 to your joint account. He did this because you told him your husband needed emergency dental surgery that insurance wouldn't cover. Is that correct? Mom shifted in her seat. Yes. Gary had bad teeth. And yet, Harrison produced another paper. Dental records show Gary hasn't been to a dentist since 2015. However, on August 15, 2018, the very next day, there was a payment of $14,500 to Paradise Cruise Lines. The room went dead silent. I stared at my mother. I remembered that transfer. I had drained my emergency fund for that. I ate ramen for 2 months. I thought my dad was in pain. Mom stammered. We needed a break. The stress of Gary's teeth, we needed to get away to heal. So you went on a cruise? I asked, my voice breaking the protocol. You went on a cruise with the money I gave you for surgery? You don't understand. Mom yelled, slamming her hand on the table. We deserved it. We raised you. We sacrificed everything. You owe us. We're just getting started, Harrison said coldly. He went through the records line by line. The $5,000 for car repairs that went to a casino. The $3,000 for groceries that went to a high-end handbag store. The $25,000 Helic loan that was simply transferred to Kyle's account with a memo line, "Go get him, Tiger." It wasn't just bad luck. It wasn't just incompetence. It was theft. Systemic, deliberate theft. They had been lying to me for a decade. Every crisis was manufactured. Every emergency was a cover story for their spending addiction and their obsession with propping up Kyle. My father sat there, head in his hands. He knew. He had signed the checks. He was just as guilty. "I think we're done here," Harrison said after 2 hours of grilling. "Mr. Stone, I suggest you advise your clients to drop this suit before we countersue for fraud. We have enough here to file criminal charges for theft by deception." Mom went pale. "You wouldn't," she whispered, looking at me. "You wouldn't send your own mother to jail." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had manipulated, lied, and stolen from me while calling it love. "Drop the suit," I said. "And never, ever contact me again. If I see you, if I hear from you, if you send a carrier pigeon to my house, I will hand this file to the district attorney." Stone was packing his briefcase before I finished the sentence. "We're withdrawing the complaint," he muttered. They left the room. Mom was crying loud, heaving sobs meant to make me turn around. I didn't. Dad shuffled out behind her, looking like a ghost. Harrison clapped me on the shoulder. "You okay?" "No," I said. "But I will be." I walked out of that building and into the sunlight. I felt lighter. Physically lighter. The burden of their need was gone, replaced by the clarity of their greed. They didn't need help. They needed consequences. I drove to Sarah's apartment. I hadn't been there before, but her address was on the subpoena list as a potential witness. I knocked. She opened the door, looking terrified. "It's over," I said. They dropped the suit. She exhaled, leaning against the doorframe. Thank God. I was so scared they'd drag me into court. "I have a question," I said. "Did you know about the cruise? About the casino?" Sarah looked down. "I knew about some of it. The cruise, yeah. They told me they won it in a contest. But I saw the tickets. I knew they bought them. I didn't know it was your money, Dave. I swear. I thought Dad got a bonus or something." I believed her. In the hierarchy of our family, Sarah was the pet, not the partner. She was kept in the dark, fed scraps, and told to be grateful. "Grab your coat," I said. "Why?" "Because I just saved $20,000 in legal fees. I'm taking my sister to dinner. A real dinner. No strings attached." We went to a steakhouse. We ordered the ribeye. We talked about her classes. She was getting A's. She wanted to go to law school eventually. "Don't expect me to pay for it," I joked. "I wouldn't dream of it," she grinned. "I'm applying for scholarships. I'm going to be the reliable one for myself." Part 3, The Final Echo. It's been 2 years since the deposition. I am 34 now. I own my house, a nice 3-bedroom with a yard. I have a dog, a rescue golden retriever named Buster who has zero concept of personal space. Maya and I are engaged. The wedding is next spring. It will be small. Her parents are wonderful, normal, kind people who insist on paying for the rehearsal dinner not because they have to, but because they want to. It took me a long time to accept their generosity without looking for the hook. My parents are somewhere. I heard from a cousin that Dad passed away 6 months ago. A massive stroke. I didn't go to the funeral. That was the hardest decision of my life. Society tells you that death absolves all sins. That you have to go to the funeral. That you'll regret it if you don't. I sat with Dr. Eris for 3 sessions discussing it. "What would you be going for?" she asked. "To say goodbye," I said. "You said goodbye 2 years ago," she reminded me. "The man in that coffin is a stranger who stole from you." "But what will people think?" "David," she said, leaning forward. "The people who matter know the truth. The people who don't know the truth don't matter." So I stayed home. I lit a candle in my living room. I drank a glass of whiskey. I mourned the father I wished I had, not the one I lost. Mom tried to contact me after the funeral. She sent a letter via a lawyer, a different one, claiming Dad's dying wish was for reconciliation and financial assistance for the funeral costs. Harrison sent a reply, refused. I found out later that Kyle didn't go to the funeral either. He was still in Arizona, apparently dealing with his own legal troubles regarding some solar panel scam. Mom was alone. It is a tragedy. I don't deny that. It is a tragedy of their own making, a slow-motion car crash that lasted 30 years. But here's the thing about car crashes: you don't have to stay in the wreckage. You can crawl out. You can walk away. You can heal. I am healing. I still have nightmares sometimes. I dream that my bank account is zero. I dream that I'm back in that living room, with them staring at me, demanding, taking, eating. But then I wake up. I hear Buster snoring on the rug. I feel Maya breathing beside me. I see the moonlight coming through the window of a house that is mine, paid for with money that is mine, in a life that is mine. I was the reliable one. Everyone used me. Now, I am the reliable one for the people who cherish me. And most importantly, I am reliable for myself. If you are waiting for the moment to stop saying yes, let this be your sign. The world will not end. The sky will not fall. The only thing that will fall apart is the cage they built around you. Step out. The air is fine. Final edit. A lot of people in the comments are asking about the ledger. Do I still have it? Did I ever get the money back? No. I burned the physical ledger the night I got engaged. I realized that keeping a tally of what they owed me was a way of staying attached to them. It was a tether. By holding on to the debt, I was holding on to the hope that one day they would pay it, and by paying it, they would validate me. They can't pay it. They have nothing. The currency they deal in, guilt and manipulation, has no value to me anymore. Forgiveness isn't about saying what they did was okay. It's about letting go of the hope that the past can be different. I forgave the debt not for them, but to free myself from being their creditor. I am no longer a bank. I am just David. And that is enough. End of story. My wife said I was paranoid about her coworker. I trusted her. Until I found the messages she forgot to delete. I am writing this from a hotel room. My hands are still shaking, not from cold, but from a mixture of adrenaline and pure unadulterated rage. I need to get this out. I need to document this before she tries to spin the narrative, because I know that is exactly what she is doing right now. If you are reading this, do not let anyone tell you that your gut instinct is wrong. Do not let anyone call you insecure for noticing that the dynamic in your marriage has shifted. I made that mistake. I let my wife convince me that I was the villain in our marriage for asking simple questions. I let her diagnose me with paranoia while she was actively dismantling our life together, brick by brick. My name is David. I am 32. My wife, Elena, is 30. We have been married for 5 years, together for 8. Our relationship was the kind that other people envied. We were a team. We rarely fought, and when we did, it was productive. We had a rule: never go to bed angry. We communicated. Or at least, I thought we did. Everything changed 6 months ago when Elena started a new job at a boutique marketing firm. She was excited. It was a step up in her career, a better title, more money. I was thrilled for her. I took her out to dinner to celebrate. I bought her a new briefcase. I was the supportive husband. That was when she met Mark. Mark is a creative director at her firm. I heard about Mark on her second day. Mark was funny. Mark had great ideas. Mark helped her with the printer. Mark. Initially, I did not mind. I have female colleagues. I have work friends. It is normal. I wanted her to fit in. I wanted her to feel comfortable. But the stories about Mark shifted. They went from professional admiration to personal anecdotes. I learned that Mark was going through a messy breakup. I learned that Mark loved the same obscure indie bands that Elena loved in college. I learned that Mark was misunderstood by the other managers. The first red flag was the phone. Elena used to be careless with her phone. She would leave it on the kitchen counter, on the coffee table, in my car. We knew each other's passcodes. I never looked through her phone because I never had a reason to. But about 3 months into this job, the phone became an extension of her hand. If we were watching a movie, the phone was face down on her thigh. If she went to the bathroom, the phone went with her. If she took a shower, the phone was on the counter next to the sink, playing music loudly so she could hear notifications. One Tuesday night, we were eating dinner. Her phone buzzed on the table. She snatched it up with a speed that startled me. "Who is that?" I asked, casually. "Just work," she said. She did not look at me. She typed a rapid response and flipped the phone face down. "Everything okay with the account?" I asked, trying to be conversational. "It is fine, David. Just a crisis with the graphics. Mark is freaking out." Mark seems to freak out a lot at 8 p.m., I noted. The air in the room changed instantly. Elena dropped her fork. She looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. It was a mix of annoyance and pity. "Do not start," she said. "Start what?" "The jealous husband act. It is not a good look on you." I was taken aback. "I am not being jealous. I am just observing that your coworker texts you a lot after hours. He is my creative director, David. We have a deadline. God, you are so insecure sometimes." That was the first time she said it. Insecure. It stung. I prided myself on being secure. I backed down immediately. I apologized. I told her I was just tired. I did the dishes that night as a peace offering. Over the next month, the distance between us grew. It was not a sudden break, it was a slow erosion. She stopped asking about my day. She stopped initiating intimacy. When I tried to touch her, she was touched out or exhausted or feeling gross. Yet, she would spend an hour in the bathroom getting ready for work the next morning, applying makeup she never used to wear, picking out outfits that were significantly more stylish than her usual office attire. I brought it up. I tried to do it the right way. I used "I feel" statements. "Elena, I feel like we are drifting apart. I feel like you are more invested in your work life than our home life." She sighed, the kind of heavy, dramatic sigh that signals a teenager dealing with a nagging parent. "I am just stressed, David. This job is demanding. Mark relies on me a lot because the rest of the team is incompetent. I need you to be supportive, not another source of stress." "I am trying to support you," I said. "But I miss my wife. And frankly, I feel like Mark is overstepping boundaries." She laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "You are obsessed with him. It is actually kind of creepy, David. You are projecting. Are you cheating on me? Is that what this is?" "What? No. I am talking about the fact that he texted you at midnight last Saturday. He was drunk and sad about his ex, David. He needed a friend. I am a good friend. Unlike you, apparently, who cannot handle your wife having a male friend without turning it into a soap opera. You are being paranoid. You need to work on your self-esteem." She was so convincing. She looked me in the eye with such conviction that I started to question my own reality. Was I being controlling? Was I being that toxic guy who isolates his wife? I read articles online about retroactive jealousy and attachment styles. I convinced myself that I was the problem. I stopped asking about Mark. I stopped commenting on the late nights. When she said she was going for happy hour with the team on Fridays, I kissed her cheek and told her to have fun. I suppressed the knot in my stomach. I trusted her. I had to trust her. Without trust, we had nothing. Then came the company retreat. 2 weeks ago, Elena told me the firm was doing a weekend retreat at a lodge upstate. Team building. Strategy sessions for the upcoming quarter. She would be gone from Friday morning to Sunday afternoon. "Is the whole team going?" I asked. "Yes, obviously. It is mandatory." She packed her bag on Thursday night. She packed new lingerie. I saw it when I walked into the bedroom. She quickly shoved it under a stack of sweaters. "Buying new clothes?" I asked. "Just some stuff to feel confident. Presentation days, you know." I knew she was lying. I knew it in my bones. But the voice in my head, her voice, whispered paranoid. Insecure. Controlling. So I said nothing. I drove her to the train station Friday morning. I kissed her goodbye. She turned her cheek so my lips landed on her jawline. "Love you," I said. "See you Sunday," she replied. She did not say she loved me back. That weekend was hell. She texted sporadically. Short, dry answers. Having fun. Busy. Talk later. On Saturday night, I called her. It went to voicemail. I called again an hour later. Voicemail. I sent a text. Just wanted to say goodnight. Hope the retreat is going well. She didn't reply until Sunday morning, sorry, fell asleep early. Exhausted from brainstorming. When she came home Sunday, she was different. There was a lightness to her, a strange giddy energy that evaporated the moment she walked through our front door. She looked at me like I was a piece of furniture she had been meaning to replace. She went to take a shower. I started unpacking her bag to do the laundry. It was a habit we always had. I dumped the contents of her duffel bag onto the bed. The lingerie was gone. Not dirty. Gone. I checked the pockets. Nothing. I checked the main compartment again. Nothing. My heart hammered against my ribs. Maybe she wore it? But she was wearing her usual cotton underwear now. Maybe she threw it out? Why would she throw out expensive brand new lingerie? I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty bag. The paranoia was back, screaming at me. But I needed proof. I could not accuse her based on missing underwear. She would call me crazy again. She would say she lost it, or forgot it, or that I was imagining things. I needed concrete evidence. And then, fate handed it to me. Tuesday evening, 2 days after she returned. Elena was in the kitchen making tea. I was in the living room. Her old iPad, the one she hadn't used in 6 months since she got a new laptop, was sitting on the bookshelf. I heard a ping. A familiar Apple chime. I looked at the iPad. The screen lit up. It was connected to her iCloud. It was syncing. I walked over to the bookshelf. My steps were silent. I picked up the iPad. The battery was at 4%. She must have plugged it in recently to grab a file or a photo and forgotten about it. The notification on the screen was a message preview. Mark, God, I can still smell you on my sheets. Sunday feels like a year ago. The world stopped. The sound of the kettle whistling in the kitchen faded into a high-pitched ring in my ears. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I swiped to unlock. She hadn't changed the passcode on the old device. It was her birthday. It opened. I tapped on the messages icon. It took a moment to update. The messages cascaded down the screen, hundreds of them, filling in the gaps of the last 3 months. I did not scream. I did not run into the kitchen. I sat down on the sofa, put the iPad on my lap, and I read. I read every single word. It was not just a retreat hookup. It was a full-blown relationship. Here is what I found. I am transcribing these from the screenshots I took, because I want you to understand the depth of the deception. I want you to understand why I feel like my entire reality has been a hallucination. 2 months ago. Elena, ugh, he is asking about you again. He thinks you are texting me too much. Mark, the insecure hubby strikes again. Elena, he is just so suffocating. I feel like I can't breathe at home. I come to work just to feel like a person again. Mark, you know you can always breathe with me. I'm your escape, remember? Elena, you are more than that. You get me. He doesn't. He just wants me to be this perfect little wife. 1 month ago. Mark, I had a dream about you last night. Elena, oh yeah? Was I yelling at you about the font sizes? Mark, no. We were in my apartment. And you weren't wearing that blazer. Elena, Mark, behave. Mark, tell me you didn't like the dream. Elena, I can't tell you that. Because it might be true. 3 weeks ago, the gaslighting peak. Elena, he is threatening to look at the phone bill. He is getting so paranoid. Mark, do you need to delete this thread? Elena, no, he doesn't have the password to my new phone. And he is too weak to actually confront me. I made him feel guilty for even asking. He is apologizing right now while I text you. Mark, you are ruthless. I love it. Elena, I have to survive. I can't hurt him, but I can't lose you. The retreat weekend. Mark, room 304. Door is unlocked. Elena, give me 10 minutes. I have to call David and pretend to be tired. Later, Elena, I am shaking. That was incredible. Mark, stay the night. No one will know. Elena, I can't. If he calls and I don't answer the room phone. Just kidding. He won't call. He is terrified of upsetting me. Yesterday. Mark, I hate seeing you go home to him. Elena, I know. It is temporary. I am figuring out how to leave without looking like the bad guy. I need to make him think it is his fault. Maybe say his jealousy drove me away. Mark, smart. We can be together properly soon. I sat there for 20 minutes. I read the descriptions of what they did to each other. I read her mocking the way I dress, the way I talk, the way I try to please her. I read them planning their future together. She was not just cheating, she was rewriting our history to justify her actions. She was painting me as a villain to assuage her guilt. My hands were ice cold. The tea kettle was screaming in the kitchen. David, she called out. Do you want honey in yours? I stood up. I took the iPad. I walked into the kitchen. She was standing by the stove, wearing her silk robe. She looked beautiful. She looked like the woman I had loved for 8 years. She turned and smiled at me. Honey or lemon? She asked. I placed the iPad on the kitchen island. Face up. The message from Mark was still open on the screen. I think you forgot to delete these from the cloud, I said. My voice was calm. Unnaturally calm. It sounded like someone else was speaking. Elena looked at the iPad. She squinted, confused for a microsecond. Then, recognition hit. Her face drained of color. It went gray. She dropped the spoon she was holding. It clattered loudly on the granite countertop. She looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. David, she whispered. Mark misses your scent on his sheets, I said. And you are figuring out how to leave me without looking like the bad guy. Did I get that right? No, she said. It was a reflex. A knee-jerk denial in the face of absolute proof. David, let me explain. Explain what? That I am paranoid? That I am insecure? That I need to work on my self-esteem? She reached for the iPad. I put my hand over it. Don't, I said. I have already forwarded everything to myself. I have screenshots. I have the timestamps. I have the conversation where you bragged about manipulating me into apologizing for your affair. She stopped reaching. She wrapped her arms around herself, shrinking. The arrogance was gone. The cool marketing executive persona vanished. She looked small. It meant nothing, she said. The cliché. The absolute classic. It meant nothing. I laughed. It was a dark, dry sound. You have been sleeping with him for months. You planned it. You bought lingerie for him. You discussed how to frame me for the divorce. You mocked me. You mocked our marriage. I was confused, she shouted, her voice rising, finally showing emotion. I felt trapped. You were so overbearing, watching my every move. I was watching your moves because you were cheating on me. I roared back. I was right. Every single time I asked, I was right. And you looked me in the eye and told me I was crazy. You made me doubt my own sanity so you could go fuck Mark in a hotel room. It was just a fling, she cried, tears starting to stream down her face. I love you, David. I never stopped loving you. Mark he gave me attention. He made me feel exciting. I gave you everything, I said. I gave you patience. I gave you trust. I gave you space when you asked for it. And you used that space to replace me. She tried to close the distance between us. She reached for my arm. David, please. We can fix this. I will quit the job. I will block him. I will do anything. Do not throw away 8 years over a stupid mistake. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk, I said, stepping back from her touch. A mistake is not a 3-month campaign of lies and gaslighting. You didn't just cheat, Elena. You tortured me psychologically. You made me feel small so you could feel big. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the tears, the trembling lip. And I felt nothing. The love I had for her, the immense, overwhelming love that had defined my 20s, was gone. It had been incinerated by the text messages on that screen. I am leaving, I said. No, you can't, she panicked. This is our house. You can't just leave tonight. Watch me. I walked into the bedroom. I grabbed my suitcase from the closet. The same one I used for our honeymoon. I started throwing clothes in blindly. Shirts, socks, underwear. She followed me, crying, begging. She stood in the doorway, blocking my exit. David, Stop. You are being irrational. We need to talk about this calmly. I am being irrational? I spun around. That is rich, Elena. That is really rich. Move. No. I won't let you leave like this. If you do not move, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, I am going to call your parents and I am going to read them the texts where you describe what you did in room 304. Then I am going to call Mark's wife. I know he has one. I saw the reference in the texts from 2 months ago. Her eyes went wide. The threat landed. She realized I was not the same David she had manipulated yesterday. I was someone else now. I was the man who had seen the truth. She stepped aside. I walked past her. I walked down the stairs. I did not look back at the kitchen. I grabbed my keys. I walked out the front door into the cool night air. I drove for an hour. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to put distance between me and the lie I had been living in. I eventually found this hotel. It is a cheap roadside place. The carpet smells like stale cigarettes. The traffic outside is loud. But it is the most peaceful place I have ever been, because she is not here. I have been sitting here for 3 hours. My phone has been blowing up. 47 missed calls from Elena. Texts ranging from I love you to you are ruining everything to please come home. I also got a text from Mark's number. I don't know how she gave him my number, or maybe she is texting from his phone. It said, man to man, don't blow up my life. We can work this out. I blocked him. I am not going to blow up his life. His life is not my concern. My concern is salvaging the remains of my dignity. I have already emailed a divorce lawyer. I found one with good reviews who specializes in high-conflict cases. I sent him the file with the screenshots. I am not hiding anything. I am not protecting her anymore. The hardest part is not the sex. I can almost wrap my head around the physical betrayal. People are weak. Flesh is weak. The hardest part is the conversation where she told Mark that I was too weak to confront her. She laughed at my trust. She weaponized my love for her against me. She viewed my kindness as a defect. I trusted her. I trusted her when every instinct in my body screamed that something was wrong. I silenced my own intuition because I valued her word over my own perception. I will never make that mistake again. To anyone reading this who feels that knot in their stomach. To anyone whose partner is suddenly guarding their phone, or staying late at work, or calling you paranoid for asking reasonable questions. Check the iPad. Check the phone bill. Trust your gut. You are not crazy. You are just noticing what they are trying to hide. I am going to try to sleep now. Tomorrow, I have to go back to the house to get the rest of my things. I am bringing my brother with me. I am not facing her alone again. I am done being the weak husband. I will update when I can. For now, I am just a man in a hotel room, realizing that the last 6 months of my life were a fiction written by the person I loved most in the world. Update 1. It has been 3 days since I left. The fallout has been nuclear. I went back to the house yesterday with my brother, Sam. Sam is the opposite of me. He is big, loud, and has zero tolerance for nonsense. He has never really liked Elena. He always thought she was high maintenance, though he never said it to my face until now. When we pulled into the driveway, Elena's car was there. I felt sick. I wanted to just grab my stuff and vanish, but I knew I had to face the reality of dismantling a household. We walked in. The house was a wreck. It looked like a tornado had hit it. Dishes piled in the sink, clothes thrown on the couch. Elena was sitting at the kitchen table. She looked terrible. Eyes puffy, hair unwashed. A performance of grief? Maybe. Or maybe the reality that her safety net had snapped was finally hitting her. When she saw Sam, she stiffened. Why is he here? She snapped. He is here to make sure I get my things without a scene, I said. We are not staying long. David, please, she stood up. We need to talk. Just us. I have been calling you for days. I know. My lawyer will be in touch with you regarding communication. Until then, we have nothing to say. Lawyer? She looked genuinely shocked. You actually got a lawyer? David, it has been 3 days. You are escalating this. You escalated this when you slept with Mark, Sam said, cutting in. He didn't even look at her. he was scanning the room. Dave, grab the electronics. I'll get the heavy stuff from the office. You are not taking the computer. Elena screamed. That is ours. It was a gift from my parents, I said calmly. And I have the receipt. I am taking what is mine. You keep the house for now. I am not paying the mortgage next month though. You and Mark can figure that out. That hit a nerve. Mark isn't. Mark and I aren't together like that, she stammered. He panicked. I stopped packing my monitor. I looked at her. He panicked. She looked down. He is worried about his wife finding out. He said we need to cool it for a while. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was a harsh barking laugh that hurt my throat. So, let me get this straight. You threw away our marriage for a guy who immediately dumped you the second there was a risk of consequences? And now that your backup plan failed, you want your safety net back. It is not like that, she cried. I realized I made a mistake. I realized you are the one I want. No, Elena. You realized I am the one who pays the bills and validates your ego. You want the stability. You don't want me. I went upstairs. I packed the rest of my clothes. I took the important documents, passport, birth certificate, the deed to the house. I cleared out the safe. When I came back down, she was sitting at the table, crying into her hands. It was a pathetic sight. Part of me, the part that had spent 8 years loving her, wanted to comfort her. Wanted to tell her it would be okay. But then I remembered the text. He is too weak to actually confront me. I hardened my heart. I walked past her. Goodbye, Elena, I said. She didn't look up. As we were loading the truck, a car pulled up. It was a BMW. Mark. I had never met him in person, only seen photos. He looked different in real life. Shorter. Older. He looked terrified. He got out of the car and walked up the driveway. He didn't see Sam, who was in the back of the truck. He walked straight to me. David, he asked. That is me. Look, man. We need to talk. Elena said you have screenshots. I do. You can't release those, he said, trying to sound authoritative but failing miserably. I have a family. I have kids. This was a mistake. It got out of hand. Elena. She came onto me strong, you know? It is hard to say no in that environment. My blood boiled. He was throwing her under the bus. Just like she tried to throw me under the bus. They deserved each other. Get off my property, I said. Listen, I can pay you, he said. If this is about money. Sam stepped out from behind the truck. Sam is 6'4" and works in construction. He cracked his knuckles. The man said get off his property, Sam rumbled. Mark looked at Sam, then at me. He turned pale. He backed away, hands up. Okay. Just, be reasonable, David. I am being reasonable, I said. I am leaving. You too can have the wreckage. He got in his car and sped off. I looked at the house one last time. It was the house where we planned to raise kids. It was the house where we hosted Christmas. Now, it was just a building full of bad memories. We drove away. Since then, the trickle truth has started coming out. Mutual friends have been reaching out to me. Apparently, Elena has been spinning a story that I was abusive and controlling, and that she sought comfort in a friend, and I blew it out of proportion. But here is the thing about evidence. It speaks for itself. I sent a group text to our close friend group. I didn't send the sexual texts. I sent the ones where she mocked them. The ones where she called her best friend needy, and her sister a leech. I burnt the bridge. I scorched the earth. I know some people will say that is petty. They will say I should take the high road. But I am done with the high road. The high road is where I got run over. Elena is blowing up my phone as I write this. She is switching between rage and begging. She says I am ruining her reputation. She says she might lose her job if rumors spread. I replied once, you should have thought about that before you booked room 304. I am currently staying at Sam's place. I have a meeting with a lawyer tomorrow to file the petition. I am going for a clean break. No alimony. We split the assets, sell the house, and go our separate ways. I feel empty. I feel like a hollow shell of a person. But I also feel a strange, cold clarity. I know the truth now. I am not paranoid. I am not crazy. I was right. And being right has never felt so terrible. I will survive this. I know I will. But I don't think I will ever trust anyone blindly again. That part of me, the innocent trusting part, died the moment I saw that iPad screen. If there is a lesson here, it is this: intuition is survival instinct. It is evolution trying to protect you. Don't silence it to make someone else comfortable. I'm going to grab a beer with Sam now. He says I need to celebrate the start of my new life. It doesn't feel like a celebration yet. It feels like a funeral. But maybe eventually, it will feel like freedom. Update 2: The fallout and the lawyer. It has been a week since the confrontation. Things are moving fast. Faster than I expected. I met with my lawyer, Mr. Henderson. He is an older guy, shark-like eyes but a gentle demeanor. I laid everything out. The timeline, the finances, the evidence. When he saw the texts, he just nodded. Standard, he said, but effective. In a no-fault state, infidelity doesn't always affect the financial split, but it certainly helps with leverage. She won't want these read into the public record if it goes to trial. I don't want a trial, I told him. I just want out. Then we strike hard and fast, he said. We drafted the separation agreement. We are listing the house immediately. I am freezing our joint accounts. I left her enough to buy groceries, but I cut off the credit cards that are in my name. Elena found out about the credit cards yesterday. She called me, screaming. I tried to buy coffee and it was declined. How could you do this? This is financial abuse. No, Elena, I said, putting the phone on speaker so Sam could hear. That is my card. You have your own salary. You can buy your own coffee. I am not financing your life anymore. But my check doesn't clear until Friday. What am I supposed to do? Ask Mark, I said. She hung up. Later that day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I usually let them go to voicemail, but I had a feeling. Hello. Is this David? A woman's voice. Shaky. Yes. Who is this? This is Jessica, Mark's wife. My stomach dropped. I hadn't contacted her yet. I had threatened to, but I hadn't pulled the trigger. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be the one to destroy another family. Hi, Jessica, I said. Did you know? She asked. I found out last Tuesday. Mark told me, she said. Her voice broke. He told me you were crazy. He said you were threatening him. He said nothing happened, that your wife was just obsessed with him and he was trying to let her down easy. I closed my eyes. Mark was a coward of the highest order. Jessica, I said gently, do you want the truth? I need the truth. I have screenshots. I can send them to you. But I have to warn you, they are graphic. And they prove that it was very much mutual. It wasn't just my wife. Mark was. He was pursuing her just as hard. Silence on the other end. Then a small, please send them. I sent them. I sat there for 10 minutes, staring at the phone. I felt guilty. I felt like I had just handed someone a loaded gun. But she deserved to know. She was being gaslit just like I was. 20 minutes later, she texted back. Thank you. I threw him out. I didn't reply. There was nothing to say. We were members of the worst club on earth. That night, Elena showed up at Sam's house. She pounded on the door until Sam answered. I want to see David, she screamed. Sam blocked the doorway. He doesn't want to see you. He ruined Mark's life, she shrieked. Jessica kicked him out. He has nowhere to go. He is blaming me. He says it is my fault. I walked to the door. I stood behind Sam. It is your fault, I said. And his. You two made the choices. Now you are dealing with the consequences. You are vindictive, she spat. I never knew you were this cruel. I am not cruel, Elena. I am just providing transparency. You guys liked secrets. I like the truth. The truth is, Mark is a cheater, and so are you. Now everyone knows. I hate you, she said. I know, I replied. The feeling is mutual. She stormed off. I watched her get into her car. She looked defeated. The anger was just a shield for the panic. Her world was crumbling. Her job was likely next. If the firm found out about the interoffice affair and the chaos it was causing, HR would have a field day. I went back inside. Sam handed me a beer. You handled that well, he said. I don't feel good about it, I admitted. You shouldn't. It sucks. But you stood your ground. The present moment. So, here we are. It has been 2 weeks. The house is on the market. Elena is staying with her parents. Her mother called me once to try and mediate, saying marriage is hard work. I told her mother, cheating isn't work. It's a vacation from morality. I am not interested in working on a lie. She hasn't called back. I am looking for a new apartment. A bachelor pad. It feels strange to be 32 and looking for a one-bedroom apartment. I feel like I am regressing. But then I remember the silence in my head. The absence of that nagging voice asking where is she? Who is she with? Am I annoying her? That anxiety is gone. It has been replaced by grief, sure. But the anxiety, the terrible gut-wrenching feeling of being gaslit, is gone. I sleep through the night now. I found out yesterday that Elena was fired. Apparently, Jessica called the firm. I don't know the details, and I didn't ask. But it seems the work-husband dynamic violated some company policy, or maybe the drama just became too much. Elena sent me one last email. No subject line. I lost everything. Mark blocked me. My job is gone. You took the house. I hope you are happy. I didn't reply. I deleted it. Am I happy? No. I am mourning the death of the life I thought I had. I am mourning the woman I thought she was. But I am free. And for the first time in 6 months, when I look in the mirror, I don't see a paranoid, insecure man. I see a survivor. I am going to keep moving forward. One day at a time. Thanks for listening, Reddit. It helped to write this out. Stay safe. And check the iPad. The phrase man up cost me exactly 12 years of my life. It cost me a scholarship to the most prestigious architectural program in Zurich. It cost me the love of a woman who waited 3 years for me to put myself first, only to realize I never would. It cost me my credit score, my mental health, and the very concept of a good night's sleep. But yesterday, when I finally asked for a return on that investment, I realized the currency I had been paying in was counterfeit. I am 32 years old. I drive a 2014 Honda Civic with a dent in the rear bumper that I cannot afford to fix. My younger brother, Ryan, drives a leased Audi. My younger sister, Emily, just closed on her first house with her husband. My parents live in a 4-bedroom home that is fully paid off. And I am the reason for all of it. Yesterday, I sat at the dining room table where I had once done my calculus homework, and I asked for help. I did not ask for a handout. I did not ask for a donation. I asked for a loan of $5,000 to cover a certification course that would finally, after a decade of delay, allow me to pivot back into the field I was born to work in. My father looked at me. He didn't look angry. He didn't look sad. He looked annoyed. He took a sip of his coffee, set the mug down on the coaster I had bought them for Christmas, and said 2 words. Man up. That was the moment the fog lifted. That was the moment the narrative I had been telling myself, that we were a team, that we were in the trenches together, that my sacrifice was a temporary measure to save the family unit, shattered. We weren't a team. I was the draft horse, and they were the passengers in the carriage, complaining about the bumps in the road. To understand why those 2 words broke me, you have to understand who I was before I became their ATM. 12 years ago, I was not this tired ghost of a man. I was 20. I was sharp. I was hungry. I had just received a full scholarship to a master's program in architecture at ETH Zurich. It was not just a school. It was the place. I had a vision for sustainable urban housing that I had been refining since I was 16. I had professors writing letters of recommendation that made me blush. I had a ticket out of our rusted-out industrial town and into a life where my mind was my greatest asset. Then the crash happened. Not the stock market. My father. He ran a mid-sized logistics company. It was the classic story of a man who knew how to drive a truck but didn't know how to manage a ledger. He had over-leveraged. He had taken out loans to pay off other loans. When he had his heart attack, the house of cards didn't just fall. It disintegrated. I remember the day. I was packing my suitcase for Switzerland. My mother came into my room. She didn't knock. She just stood in the doorway, holding a stack of envelopes that looked like they had been opened with a knife. Her face was gray. She told me Dad might not make it. She told me the bank was coming for the house in 30 days. She told me Ryan, who was 16, and Emily, who was 14, would have to change schools. She told me there was no money for groceries, let alone tuition. I looked at my suitcase. I looked at the letter from Zurich sitting on my desk. I made the choice that any good son would make. I unpacked the suitcase. I called the university and deferred my enrollment. Then I called them back a week later and canceled it entirely. I took over the logistics company. It was a disaster. The books were a crime scene of mismanagement. I had to fire people who had known me since I was a baby. I had to negotiate with creditors who threatened legal action. I worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. I slept on a cot in the dispatch office because driving home took 40 minutes I could not spare. For 5 years, I did not take a salary. I took just enough to eat fast food and keep my phone active. Every single cent of profit went to 3 things: the family mortgage, my father's medical bills, and my siblings' futures. My father survived, but he was never the same. He couldn't work. He sat in his recliner, watching news channels, depressed and angry at his own frailty. My mother became his caretaker and the household manager. She kept the emotional ledger, and she made sure I knew exactly how much stress they were under. "We just need to get through this month," she would say. I made sure they got through that month. And the next. And the next. When Ryan graduated high school, he wanted to go to a private university 2 states away. It was expensive. I told my mother we couldn't afford it. I showed her the spreadsheets. I showed her the thin margins we were operating on. "He is your brother," she said, her voice trembling. "He has such potential. You don't want him to end up working at the depot, do you? Like us." That was the hook. The guilt. The implication that my current reality was a punishment, and it was my duty to prevent my siblings from serving the same sentence. I worked double shifts. I started driving routes myself on weekends to save on driver wages. I missed my best friend's wedding because I was hauling a load of timber across state lines to make the tuition payment. Ryan went to the private university. He joined a fraternity. He posted pictures of keg stands and road trips while I was arguing with mechanics about the cost of a transmission repair. Then it was Emily's turn. She wanted to study art history. I suggested community college for the general credits. My father, finding his voice from the recliner, told me I was being cheap. "She is a young lady," he said. "She deserves the experience." I paid for the experience. By the time I was 28, I had stabilized the company. I had paid off the business loans. I had paid off the house mortgage. I had put 2 siblings through college debt-free. I went to my parents. I had a plan. I wanted to sell the business. It was profitable now, worth something. I could take my share, finally go back to school, maybe not Zurich, but somewhere good. I could start my life. "You can't sell," my mother said, horrified. "That is your father's legacy. And what would you do? You are 28. You are too old to go back to school with those kids. This is your career now. You are good at it." I looked at them. They were comfortable. They were safe. And they were terrified of change. I didn't sell. I kept running it. But I started to feel a darkness growing inside me. It was resentment. It was a cold, heavy stone in my gut that got heavier every time Ryan asked for money for a networking trip, or Emily needed a deposit for an apartment. Fast forward to present day. The logistics industry took a hit. Automation, fuel prices, big conglomerates squeezing out the little guys. I saw the writing on the wall. I downsized the company, sold the fleet, and transitioned it into a small brokerage that my father could manage from his computer with minimal effort. It provided enough income for my parents to live comfortably, but it didn't need me anymore. I was free. Theoretically. But I was broke. I had spent my entire adult life pouring money into the family pot. I had 0 savings. I had no degree. My resume said manager, but my skill set was niche and blue-collar. Then I found it. A condensed, intensive certification program in project management for construction. It was designed for people with industry experience but no formal degree. It was perfect. It connected to my old dream of architecture but leveraged the grit I had developed in logistics. It cost $5,000. I applied. I got in. The acceptance email felt like the first breath of fresh air I had taken in a decade. I checked my bank account. $300. I wasn't worried. I had a family. I had a brother who was now a VP in sales making 6 figures. I had a sister who married a corporate lawyer. I had parents whose house I had paid for. I invited myself over for Sunday dinner. The atmosphere was jovial. Ryan was talking about his new golf clubs. Emily was complaining about the contractor redoing her master bath. My mother was beaming, serving roast beef. My father was at the head of the table, looking like the patriarch he believed he was. I waited until dessert. I have some news, I said. I got into a program. Oh, my mother said, pouring gravy. Like a hobby? No. A career change. It's project management. It gets me back toward construction and design. It's a 6-week intensive. That sounds nice, Emily said, checking her phone. The tuition is $5,000, I said. And since the course is full-time, I won't be able to work my night shift at the warehouse for those 6 weeks. So I need to cover rent and food. I've done the math. Between tuition and living expenses, I need about $8,000 to make it work. I paused. I looked around the table. I'm asking for a loan, I said. I don't expect it as a gift. But I need some help to get this started. I was hoping, considering everything, we could work something out. The silence that followed was not the silence of contemplation. It was the silence of offense. Ryan laughed first. It was a short, sharp bark of a laugh. $8,000? Bro, I just put down 12 on the Audi. I'm tapped until bonus season. I looked at him. You make $150,000 a year, Ryan. Yeah, and I have expenses, he said, defensive instantly. Lifestyle creep is real. You wouldn't understand. I turned to Emily. She looked down at her plate. We have the renovation, she mumbled. And we're trying for a baby. We really can't spare liquid cash right now. I turned to my parents. They were the ones I was really counting on. They didn't have high income, but they had equity. They had the savings I had helped them build. My mother looked at my father. My father wiped his mouth with a napkin. You are 32 years old, my father said. I know how old I am, I said. I spent my 20s paying your mortgage. That is what family does, he snapped. You don't keep score. We raised you. We put a roof over your head. I paid for the roof. I raised my voice. I literally paid off the mortgage note, Dad. I have the receipts. I paid for Ryan's degree. I paid for Emily's wedding venue. Don't throw that in our faces, my mother hissed. That was your choice. You stepped up. We were proud of you. I am asking for $5,000, I said, my voice shaking. I am asking for a fraction of what I gave. I am stuck. I hate my job. I have a chance to change my life. I just need a push. My father leaned back. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and disdain. If you hate your job, get a different one, he said. Work harder. Save up. Don't come here with your hand out like a beggar. It's unbecoming. A beggar. I stared at him. I saved this family. You did your duty, he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. And now you want a medal? You want us to bow down? You are a grown man. If you want to go to school, figure it out. Get a second job. Sell that car. Man up. The room went dead silent. I looked at Ryan. He was checking his watch. I looked at Emily. She was texting. I looked at my mother. She was aggressively cutting a piece of meat, refusing to make eye contact. Man up. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. Okay, I said. Sit down, my father said. Have some pie. Don't be dramatic. No, I said. I think I'm done. I walked out. My mother called my name once, half-heartedly, but I didn't stop. I got into my dented Honda Civic. I sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I drove home to my studio apartment. I didn't sleep. Instead, I opened my laptop. I am a person who likes data. In the logistics business, you survive by knowing the numbers. Every mile, every gallon of diesel, every hour of labor. I have kept records. Habits die hard. I opened a spreadsheet that I hadn't looked at in years. It was titled Family Accounts. I started from the year I was 20. I went through my bank statements, which I have digitized. I went through the business ledgers. I tallied every single transfer. Transfer to Mom Grocery. Transfer to University, Ryan Tuition. Transfer to vendor, Emily Wedding Catering. Transfer to bank mortgage principal paydown. Transfer to Dad medical copay. I spent 6 hours on it. I categorized everything. I adjusted for inflation just to see the real damage, but I kept the final total in nominal dollars to be fair. The total came to $482,000. That was the principal. That was the money I had directly injected into their lives. That didn't account for the opportunity cost. It didn't account for the compound interest that money could have earned if I had invested it in an S&P 500 index fund. It didn't account for the salary increase I would have had if I had become an architect. $482,000. I looked at that number as the sun came up. I wrote an email. Subject: Final Statement. I attached the spreadsheet. I made it a PDF so they couldn't accidentally edit the cells. In the body of the email, I wrote, "Attached is a detailed accounting of the financial support I have provided to this family over the last 12 years. The total is $482,000. I am not asking for this money back. I know you don't have it, and even if you did, you wouldn't give it to me. However, last night you told me to man up. You told me that my contributions were simply duty, and that asking for 1% of that back in my time of need was begging. I agree. I need to man up. And the first step of being a man is looking out for his own future. Effective immediately, I am resigning from my role as the emergency contact for all of you. Do not call me when the water heater breaks. Do not call me when the tax bill comes. Do not call me when you need someone to drive you to the airport. Ryan, you are now the highest earner in the family. The torch is passed. It is your duty now. Emily, you have a house and a husband. You are established. Mom and Dad, the business is yours. If you need help managing it, I suggest you hire a consultant. Their going rate is $150 an hour. I am selling my things. I am moving. I will figure out my own tuition. Do not contact me." I hit send at 7 a.m. Then I got to work. I listed my car on Craigslist. It sold by noon for $3,000. It was cheap, but I needed cash now. I sold my gaming console. I sold my television. I sold my grandfather's watch that I had kept in a drawer, the only heirloom I had. By the end of the day, I had $4,500. It wasn't enough, but it was close. My phone started blowing up around 8 a.m. Ryan called 6 times. Mom called 12 times. Dad didn't call. Emily sent a text, "Are you serious? This is insane. Mom is crying." I blocked them. All of them. I went to the bank and withdrew every cent I had. I closed the account that was linked to the family business as a signatory. I went to the admissions office of the technical college. I put the $4,500 cash on the desk. "I am $500 short," I told the administrator. "But I can start today. I will pay the rest in 2 weeks. I will scrub the toilets here if I have to." She looked at me. She looked at the desperation in my eyes. She saw a man who was burning his boats on the shore. "We can put you on a payment plan," she said softly. "I started the course today. I am sitting in a library right now. I have no car. I am staying in a hostel that costs $30 a night because I gave up my apartment lease to save the breakage fee. I am eating instant noodles. I am 32 years old and I am starting from zero. But for the first time in 12 years, the debt is paid. The silence on my phone is the loudest sound I have ever heard. It rings with the absence of their demands. I keep waiting for the guilt to hit me. I keep waiting to feel like a bad son. But all I feel is light. I checked my email one last time before coming here to write this. There was one email from my father. Subject, final statement. You are an ungrateful child. Do not come back when you fail. I deleted it. I won't fail. I can't afford to. Because for the first time, I'm investing in the only asset that has never let me down, the only asset that matters. Me. Update 1, 6 months later. It has been exactly 184 days since I walked out of that dining room. A lot of people in the comments said that the high of leaving would wear off and the reality of loneliness would set in. You were right. About 3 weeks in, I was lying on a bunk bed in a hostel room that smelled like damp socks and Axe body spray, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made a mistake. It was my birthday. Not a big one, just 33. Usually, we would have a dinner. Mom would make a cake. It would be tense, and I would end up paying for the wine, but it was presents. It was people. That night, my phone was a brick. No calls. No texts. I had blocked them, yes, but deep down, a pathetic part of me hoped they would find a way around it. Maybe a card sent to my old address forwarded to a friend? Maybe a mutual acquaintance reaching out? Nothing. I bought myself a cupcake from a 7-Eleven and ate it on a park bench. It was the loneliest moment of my life. But here's the thing about rock bottom, it is a solid foundation. I finished the certification course. I didn't just pass, I obliterated it. I was the oldest guy in the room by 10 years. The other students were kids, worried about TikTok trends and weekend parties. I was a man who knew that if this didn't work, I was homeless. I studied like a demon. I treated every assignment like a paid contract. My instructor, a guy named Miller, took notice. He was an old-school construction manager, the kind of guy who can look at a blueprint and tell you exactly where the HVAC guy is going to screw up. On the last day of class, he pulled me aside. You're overqualified for entry-level, he said. Why are you here? I told him the truth. Not the sob story, just the facts. Logistics background. Family business. Starting over. He nodded. I know a guy who runs a boutique firm. They do adaptive reuse. Old warehouses turned into lofts. They need someone who understands supply chains because materials are a nightmare right now. It's not design work, it's operations. But it's in the room. I took the interview. I wore a suit I bought at a thrift store and had dry cleaned. I got the job. The pay is $55,000 a year. It is less than I made running the logistics company. It is barely enough to live in this city. But it is my money. I rented a studio apartment. It is the size of a shoebox. The stove only has 2 burners. But when I turn the key in the lock, the air inside belongs to me. Now, about the family. I held the line. No contact. But you can't ghost people completely when you live in the same interconnected world. Information leaks. I found out through a former driver at the logistics company that things went south fast. Apparently, my father tried to run the brokerage himself. But the industry has changed. It's all digital loads and automated bidding now. He missed a compliance update for the DOT. Fines. Then he lost 2 major contracts because he was rude to a shipping coordinator who didn't show him respect. Income stream dried up. This is where it gets interesting. With the parents' income down, they turn to the next in line. Ryan. The golden child. I heard this part from a cousin I haven't blocked. He's a good kid, neutral party. Ryan, Mr. Audi and golf clubs, was suddenly asked to cover the mortgage and the medical insurance. Ryan did not handle this well. According to my cousin, Ryan lasted exactly 2 months. He paid the mortgage once, then threw a fit. He told mom and dad that they needed to downsize. He told them he had his own life. The irony is so thick I could choke on it. He used the exact same arguments I had used, but because he is the golden child, they didn't tell him to man up. They panicked. Emily was next. She and her lawyer husband were asked to chip in. Her husband apparently laughed in my father's face. They are now low contact with my parents because my mother called Emily selfish. The family unit, without the beast of burden to carry it, collapsed under its own weight. Last Tuesday, I was leaving my office. There was a car parked across the street. A 2018 Lexus. My mother's car. I froze. My heart started hammering against my ribs. I considered turning around and going out the back exit. But I remembered the words. Man up. I walked to my bus stop. She got out of the car. She looked older. Tired. She wasn't wearing her usual immaculate makeup. "OP," she called out. I stopped. I didn't turn around. "Please," she said. I turned. "How did you find me?" I asked. "I called the school," she said. "They wouldn't tell me anything, but I waited. I saw you leave one day and followed you here." Stalking. Great. "What do you want, Mom?" "Your father is not doing well," she said. "The ultimate trump card. The health scare." "I am sorry to hear that," I said. My voice was steady. "Does he have a doctor?" "He has stress," she said, stepping closer. "The business, it's too much for him. We are losing money every month. We might have to sell the house." "That sounds like a sensible financial decision," I said. "The market is still high. You should get good equity out of it." She looked at me like I had slapped her. "That is our home. That is where we raised you." "And it's a 4-bedroom house for 2 people," I said. "Sell it. Buy a condo. Live off the difference. It's simple math." "We need you to come back," she whispered. Tears started welling up. "We need you to fix the books. Just for a few months. Get it stable so we can sell the business. Ryan doesn't know how. He doesn't understand the drivers." "Ryan is smart," I said. "He has a degree. I'm sure he can figure it out." "He won't help," she cried. "He says he is too busy. He says we are draining him." I almost laughed. I truly almost laughed out loud on the sidewalk. "Mom," I said. "I asked for $5,000. I asked for help for 6 weeks. You told me to man up." "We were stressed," she pleaded. "We didn't mean it like that. We were just scared you were leaving us." "I did leave you," I said. "And I'm not coming back." "How can you be so cruel?" she asked. "After everything we did for you?" I pulled out my phone. I still had the PDF of the spreadsheet saved. $482,000, I said. "That is the price of my cruelty. I paid for my freedom, Mom. I have the receipt." The bus pulled up. "If you contact me again," I said, "I will change my number. If you show up at my job, I will get a restraining order. I am not your retirement plan anymore. Call Ryan." I got on the bus. I didn't look back. I sat in the back seat, shaking. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug. I felt sick. I felt sad. I felt like a little boy who just wanted his mom to hug him. But then I looked out the window at the skyline. I saw the cranes. I saw the steel skeletons of new buildings going up. I am working on one of those sites tomorrow. I am checking verify-in field measurements for a retrofit of a historic bank. It is the lowest rung on the ladder. But I am on the ladder. I am not the savior anymore. I am just a guy trying to build a life. And for the first time, the foundation is mine. Update 2, 1 year later, the end. I didn't plan to update this again, but my inbox is still getting messages, and I feel like I owe the story a proper ending. A lot of you ask if I ever reconciled. A lot of you ask if the man up comment still hurts. Here is the reality of a year of silence. My parents sold the house. They didn't have a choice. The business went under, fully bankrupt, liquidation auction, the works. My dad's pride took a hit that he will never recover from. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighboring town. They are living off Social Security and the small amount of equity left after the business debts were settled. They are not destitute, but they are no longer upper middle class. They are average. They are facing the reality that millions of people face. Ryan is currently not speaking to them. Apparently, when the money ran out, so did his patience. He moved to Austin for a tech opportunity. He unfriended me on Facebook, which I found hilarious. Emily divorced the lawyer. I don't know the details, and I don't want to. I heard she is living with a friend and working at a gallery. As for me, I am tired. But it is a good tired. I got promoted. I am now an assistant project manager. I make $68,000. I bought a car, a used Toyota, but the bumper isn't dented. I met someone. Her name is Sarah. She is a landscape architect. We met on a job site. She noticed that I was reading a book on brutalist architecture during my lunch break. We have been dating for 4 months. She doesn't know the whole story yet. She knows I have a complicated family and that I don't talk to them. She respects it. She comes from a big, messy, loud family that loves each other fiercely, and being around them is strange for me. They support each other. If one of them needs a ride, 3 people offer. It makes me realize what I missed. It makes me realize that what I had wasn't a family, it was a hostage situation. Last week, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Handwriting I recognized. My father's. I sat with it for an hour. Sarah asked if I wanted to burn it. I said no. I needed to read it. It was short. Son, I am sitting in this apartment. It is small. The walls are thin. I can hear the neighbor's TV. Your mother cries a lot. We miss the big house. I was angry at you for a long time. I thought you abandoned ship. But I was looking at the old photos yesterday. You always looked tired. In every picture from 22 to 30, you look exhausted. I never asked you how you were. I only asked you for the check. I am not going to ask you for money. I know that door is closed. I just wanted to say that I see it now. I see what you carried. I don't expect you to call. But I wanted you to know that I know. Dad. I didn't call. Forgiveness is a tricky thing. People think it means reconciliation. It doesn't. I can forgive him for being weak. I can forgive him for using me. But I cannot let him back in. The risk is too high. The cost is too great. I folded the letter and put it in a box. I went to work. We are pouring concrete for the foundation of a new library today. It is messy, loud, hard work. My boots are covered in mud. My back aches. I stood on the edge of the pit, looking down at the rebar grid. It has to be perfect. If the steel isn't tied right, the concrete will crack. The structure will fail. I spent 12 years building on a foundation of sand. I spent 12 years trying to hold up a structure that was designed to collapse. Now, I pour my own concrete. I tie my own steel. And when the wind blows, I don't shake. I manned up. I finally manned up. I saved myself. And that is enough. My in-laws treated me like a failure while I paid their bills. They only found out who was supporting them after I walked away. I'm sitting in a house that feels too quiet, staring at a phone that hasn't stopped buzzing for 3 days. There are 42 missed calls from my mother-in-law, 14 voicemails from my father-in-law, and a string of texts from my ex-wife Sarah that range from begging to accusing. They aren't calling because they miss me. They aren't calling because they realized they were wrong. They are calling because the first of the month just passed, and for the first time in 5 years, the family trust account hit zero. The electricity at their precious lake house is about to be cut, the lease on my brother-in-law's Audi is in default, and the illusion they built their entire egos on has shattered. I used to be the family punchline. I was the guy in the hoodie who didn't have a real job. Now, I'm the guy holding the keys to their reality, and I just locked the door. Here is how it happened. I met Sarah 7 years ago. She was sharp, funny, and incredibly anxious. At the time, I didn't understand that her anxiety wasn't biological, it was manufactured. She was the product of a family dynamic so toxic it could corrode steel. Her parents, Robert and Brenda, were old money in aesthetic but no money in reality. They lived in a sprawling colonial house in a zip code they couldn't afford, driving cars that were leased to the hilt, maintaining a country club membership they used to network for loans. They were image-obsessed, status-driven, and completely hollow. Then there was Greg, Sarah's older brother. The golden child. Greg was a loud, backslapping sales guy who always had a venture on the horizon. He wore 3-piece suits to casual brunches and talked exclusively in buzzwords. To Robert and Brenda, Greg was the second coming of Steve Jobs. To anyone with a brain, Greg was a liability. And then there was me. I work in back-end logistics and high-frequency trading algorithm optimization. I don't wear suits. I don't go into an office. I work from a home setup that looks like a NASA command center, usually wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. I make a very comfortable living, mid-seven figures on a bad year, but I don't flash it. I drive a 4-year-old Volvo because it's safe. I wear a $20 watch. I believe wealth is silent. When I was introduced to the family, the judgment was instant. I walked into their foyer, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, and Brenda looked at me like I was the plumber coming to fix a toilet. "Oh," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Sarah didn't mention you were between opportunities." "I'm actually working right now," I said, referencing the server deployment running on my phone. "Freelance," Robert grunted from his armchair, not looking up from his paper. "That's code for unemployed, isn't it?" "Well, don't worry, son. Not everyone is cut out for the corporate ladder like Greg." That was the tone. For 5 years, that was the baseline. I was the fixer-upper. The charity case. The mistake Sarah made because she had low self-esteem. The financial entanglement started 6 months into our marriage. We were at Sunday dinner, a mandatory suffocating ritual, when Robert dropped the bomb. He forgot to pay the property taxes on the Colonial for the last 3 years. The county was threatening to seize the house. Brenda was weeping into her napkin, talking about the shame, about what the neighbors would say. Greg was pacing, blaming the economy and bureaucracy, despite having borrowed 10 grand from them a month prior for a startup that never materialized. Sarah looked at me, terrified. "We have to help," she whispered. "They'll lose everything." I loved Sarah. I wanted to protect her peace. So I made a mistake. A massive, strategic error. "I can cover it," I said. The table went silent. Robert laughed, a dry, hacking sound. "You? With what?" "Your Uber driving money." "I have savings," I said calmly. "I can pay the $45,000. But I don't want my name on anything, and I don't want this discussed." They didn't believe me until the cashier's check cleared. And even then, the narrative shifted immediately. They didn't thank me. They rationalized it. "He probably got a small inheritance," Brenda told Sarah within earshot of me. "It's good he spent it on family before he wasted it on video games." That established the pattern. They needed money. I provided it to keep Sarah from having a breakdown. But they couldn't reconcile their worldview, that I was a loser and they were elite, with the fact that I was funding their lifestyle. So they created a fantasy. They convinced themselves that Robert had a legacy investment finally paying out. I set up a separate bank account, which I funneled money into monthly. I labeled the transfers Family Trust Distribution. I handed control of the account debit card to Sarah, who used it to pay their bills. In their minds, the money appeared because they deserved it. I was just the spectator. Over the next 4 years, the disrespect escalated from passive-aggressive comments to open hostility. I paid for the new roof. I paid for Brenda's dental implants. I paid for the lease on Robert's Jaguar. I even unknowingly paid for Greg's engagement ring for his fiancée, a poor girl named Jessica who had no idea what she was walking into. The breaking point didn't happen all at once. It was a slow accumulation of insults, like water torture. There was the Christmas incident. We gathered at the Colonial. The tree was piled high with gifts. I had bought Robert a rare first edition book on naval history he'd been talking about for months. It cost me $4,000. I bought Brenda a silk scarf from a designer in Paris she worshipped. They opened them with mild indifference. "Nice," Robert said, tossing the book on the coffee table. "Paperback would have been lighter to hold, but thanks." Then came their gifts to us. Greg handed me a wrapped box with a smirk. "Since you're always home, I figured you could use this." It was a job hunting for dummies book and a gift card to a budget suit warehouse. "It's time to grow up, Jack," Greg said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Sarah deserves a provider. I just closed a deal worth 50 grand. That's what a man does." The room chuckled. Brenda patted my hand. "It's a tough market, Jack. Maybe you can ask Greg for an internship? He could teach you sales." I looked at Sarah. She was studying the pattern on the rug, refusing to meet my eyes. She never defended me. She said it wasn't worth the fight, that they were old school. I swallowed the rage. I smiled. "Thanks, Greg. I'll keep that in mind." I checked my phone. The notification for the auto transfer of $6,000 to the family trust account had just gone through to cover their country club dues and the heating bill. The irony tasted like battery acid. Then there was the job interview incident. Robert called me on a Tuesday afternoon. "Jack, put on a collared shirt. I got you a sit-down with a friend of mine. He runs the warehouse over on 5th. It's manual labor, packing boxes, but it's honest work. $15 an hour." "Robert, I'm working," I said. I was in the middle of patching a security vulnerability for a logistics firm in Tokyo. "Don't lie to me," he snapped. "Sarah says you're just typing on the computer. I put my neck out for you. You be there at 3 p.m. or don't bother coming to Sunday dinner." I didn't go. When we arrived for dinner that Sunday, the doors were locked. Sarah knocked. Brenda opened the door a crack. "Your father is very disappointed," she hissed. "He tried to help you stand on your own 2 feet, and you spat in his face. You can wait in the car. Sarah, come in." "I'm not waiting in the car," I said. "Then leave," Brenda said. "Sarah, are you coming?" Sarah looked at me, tears in her eyes, and then walked inside. She chose them. Again. I drove home in silence. That was the crack in the foundation. But the collapse happened 3 months later, at Greg's promotion party. Greg had managed to fail upwards into a director of sales role at a mid-sized paper supply company. To hear them tell it, he was the CEO of a Fortune 500. They rented a private room at an upscale steakhouse. Who paid the deposit? The family trust. Me. I didn't want to go, but Sarah begged. "It's a big night for him, Jack. Please. Just behave. Don't talk about your computer stuff. Just nod and smile." We arrived. The room was full of their friends, people who looked at me with the same disdain they'd learned from Robert and Brenda. I sat at the far end of the table, nursing a scotch. The toasts began. Robert stood up, glass raised, face flushed with wine. "To my son Greg," he bellowed. "The backbone of this family. The one who understands the value of hard work. In a world full of handouts and slackers." He paused, his eyes sliding down the table to lock onto me. "It is a blessing to have a son who actually earns his keep. A son who supports us, in spirit and in truth." Greg stood up, beaming. "Thanks, Dad. You know, it's easy to succeed when you have good stock. Success is genetic. You either have the drive, or you're happy living off scraps." He pointed his steak knife at me. "Take Jack here," Greg announced to the room. The silence was instant. Jack is a great guy. Really. But let's be honest. If it wasn't for Sarah, he'd be living under a bridge. He's been riding our coattails for years. But hey, every family needs a mascot, right? The room erupted in laughter. Honest, mocking laughter. I looked at Sarah. She was laughing too. A nervous, tight laugh, but she was laughing. She was nodding along to avoid being the target. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet click of a lock disengaging. I stood up. "Jack, sit down," Sarah hissed, tugging my sleeve. "Don't make a scene." I pulled my arm away. I pulled out my phone. I opened the banking app for the account I used to feed the family trust. "Robert," I said. My voice was calm, but it carried. The room quieted down, mostly out of confusion. "Sit down, boy, you're embarrassing your wife," Robert growled. "I just wanted to clarify something," I said. "Greg, you mentioned supporting the family. Can you tell everyone how much you contributed to the property taxes last year?" Greg scoffed. "Does this guy know where he is? Sit down, loser." "The property taxes were $48,000, I said. "And the roof was $22. And the country club dues are $12,000 a year. And the payments on Robert's Jaguar are $900 a month." "We have investments," Brenda shrieked, standing up. "How dare you discuss money in public? This is gauche." "You don't have investments," I said. "You have an empty account at Chase Bank that receives a wire transfer on the 1st of every month. You think it comes from a legacy fund. It comes from an LLC called Jensen Logistics." Robert turned purple. "So? That's the family holding company." "No," I said. "That's my consulting firm." The silence that followed was heavy. It was thick. "I'm the sole proprietor," I continued. I have paid every single bill for this family for 5 years. I paid for this dinner. I paid for the ring on Jessica's finger because Greg's credit score is 520. Jessica looked at Greg, horrified. You said you saved for a year. He's lying. Greg shouted, sweat popping on his forehead. He's a liar. He plays video games all day. I tapped my phone screen. I just canceled the standing order. The trust is closed. The account is empty. The card Sarah carries will decline the next time she tries to buy groceries for you. I looked at Sarah. She was pale, her mouth open. Jack, she whispered. What are you doing? I'm growing up, I said. I'm being the man Greg told me to be. A man who doesn't support people who despise him. I walked out of the restaurant. I didn't look back. I got in my Volvo and drove to a hotel. That was 3 days ago. Since then, the fallout has been nuclear. I filed for divorce the next morning. Sarah didn't fight for me at the dinner, and she didn't come after me when I left. She stayed to manage their emotions. That was my answer. The financial reality hit them within 24 hours. Robert tried to pay for the gala dinner with a card connected to the account. Declined. He tried 2 other cards. Maxed out. Greg had to put it on a credit card he definitely couldn't afford. The next day, the autodraft for the lake house electricity bounced. They got the notification. That's when the calls started. First, it was anger. Voicemail 1, Robert, you think this is funny? Playing games with our accounts? You fix this immediately, or I will sue you for fraud. Then, it was confusion. Voicemail 5, Brenda Jack, the bank is saying the funds came from your business account. There must be a mistake. Please call us. We need to clear this up. Then, sheer panic. Voicemail 12, Greg, hey man, look, maybe jokes were taken too far. But Jessica is freaking out about the ring insurance, and it says the payment failed. Can you just toggle the transfer back on? We can talk. I haven't responded to a single one. I met with my lawyer yesterday. We are freezing our shared assets, but since the gifts to her family were technically voluntary transfers from my business pre-tax, they are gone. But so is the gravy train. I dug into the numbers before I left. Without my infusion. They are 3 months behind on the Colonial mortgage. I stopped paying that directly last month to see what would happen. They didn't notice because they thought the trust covered it, but they spent the trust money on clothes. Greg's Audi is up for repo next week. Robert has 0 retirement. Sarah finally sent a text that wasn't a demand. It came through an hour ago. Text from Sarah, my dad is crying in the kitchen. He says they're going to lose the house. Mom can't breathe. Greg is leaving. They finally believe you. They know it was you. Please, Jack. Just 1 more month. Give them time to figure it out. Don't be cruel. I looked at the text. I thought about the job hunting for dummies book. I thought about the warehouse job. I thought about 5 years of being treated like a stain on their carpet while I kept the roof over their heads. I typed back, Greg said success is genetic. I'm sure they'll figure it out. Then I blocked the number. I'm sitting in this quiet hotel room, and for the first time in years, I don't feel heavy. I feel light. I just ordered a steak, a real one, and I'm going to eat it in my sweatpants. The bill is paid. Part 1, the resume. I was sitting in my office, the one with the glass walls I used to dream about while eating cold beans out of a can, when my HR director dropped a stack of papers on my desk. We were hiring for a senior account manager. It pays 6 figures. It comes with full benefits, stock options, and the kind of security my ex-wife used to scream I would never be able to provide. I flipped through the first 2. Generic. Impressive, but generic. Then I turned the page. The name was printed in bold, sans serif font at the top. Elena Vance. My stomach didn't drop. My heart didn't race. I just felt a cold, hard sense of irony settle in my chest. 3 years ago, she told me I was an anchor dragging her down. She told me my ambition was a delusion and that she needed a man who could pay the bills, not just dream about them. She walked out of our 1-bedroom apartment and left me with half the rent and a broken lease. Now, she was asking me for a job. I stared at the paper. Her experience had stagnated. She was still working the same mid-level administrative role she had when we were married. The resume was formatted well, likely by a professional service, but the substance was thin. She was applying for a position she was technically underqualified for, but her cover letter, God, the cover letter, was a masterpiece of begging disguised as corporate ambition. She wrote about seeking a dynamic leadership environment and valuing financial stability and growth. I put the paper down and looked at Sarah, my HR director. Sarah didn't know the history. Nobody here did. I kept my private life completely severed from the business. To them, I was just the founder who worked 80 hours a week and never brought a date to the Christmas party. This one, I said, tapping Elena's resume. Schedule her. Sarah looked surprised. Really? Her experience is a bit light compared to the guy from Deloitte. I almost tossed it, but she has a referral from one of our vendors. Schedule her, I repeated. I want to handle the final round personally if she makes it past the screener. Sarah shrugged and made a note. You're the boss. I'll set up the initial phone screen for Thursday. I waited until Sarah left the room before I swiveled my chair around to look out at the city skyline. I wasn't doing this out of spite. At least, that is what I told myself. I was doing it because I needed to see if she had changed. Or maybe I just needed her to see that I had. The last time I saw Elena, I was sitting on the floor of our living room, surrounded by boxes she had packed. I was crying. I am not ashamed to admit that. I was 26 years old, I had just lost my job at the logistics firm because of a massive layoff, and my side hustle, the software that would eventually become this company, was making $0. She stood over me, her keys in her hand, looking at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. That look had burned itself into my retinas. It was the look you give a sick dog that you know you have to put down. I can't do this anymore, Mark, she had said. I can't live on promises. I need a grown-up. I need someone who lives in the real world. I'm building something, I had pleaded. Give me 6 more months. The prototype is almost done. You've been building something for 2 years, she snapped. And we're still eating ramen. I'm leaving. David has a condo. He has a real job. He takes care of things. David. The guy she worked with. The guy she told me not to worry about. The guy who drove a BMW and wore suits that didn't come from a discount rack. She walked out the door. She didn't look back. She left me with the rent, the utility bills, and a hollow feeling in my gut that felt like I had swallowed a stone. Now, 3 years later, David wasn't mentioned in her resume. Her address was listed as an apartment complex on the outskirts of town, not the downtown condo she had moved into with him. And she was applying to work for the man she claimed was too broke to love. I turned back to my computer and pulled up our internal hiring portal. I flagged her application. Proceed with caution, I typed in the notes. Check references thoroughly. I was going to play this game. And I was going to win. Part 2, The Struggle. To understand why seeing her name on that paper felt like a physical blow, you have to understand where I was when she left. I wasn't just broke. I was structurally insolvent. We had met in college. Elena was beautiful, the kind of beautiful that makes you ignore red flags. She liked nice things. That isn't a crime. Most people like nice things. But Elena derived her self-worth from the things she owned and the places she was seen. When we were students, it was easy to ignore. We were all broke. Date nights were cheap pizza and sneaking wine into the park. It was romantic. But when we graduated, the reality of entry-level salaries hit her hard. She got a job as an administrative assistant at a marketing firm. I went into logistics coordination. We made decent money for 22-year-olds, but not enough to fund the lifestyle she saw on Instagram. I was always a grinder. I noticed inefficiencies in how my company handled shipping data. They were using Excel spreadsheets for things that needed a database. I started coding at night, teaching myself Python and SQL. I had an idea for a platform that could automate freight audits. It wasn't sexy. It was boring, back-end supply chain stuff. But I knew it could save companies millions. Elena hated it. You're always on that computer, she would complain, standing in the doorway of the second bedroom we used as an office. Come watch a movie with me. I have to finish this module, I would say. If I can get this working, I can pitch it to my boss. Your boss doesn't care, Mark. You're a coordinator. Just do your job and get a promotion like a normal person. She didn't understand leverage. She didn't understand equity. She understood salary. She wanted the immediate reward. Things got bad when I lost my job. The company merged, and the new management cut the entire logistics department. I was given 2 weeks severance. I saw it as a sign. I had 6 months of savings if we were frugal. I told Elena this was my chance to go full-time on the software. I incorporated. I started cold calling potential clients. Elena panicked. "You're unemployed," she screamed. "You're not an entrepreneur. You're unemployed." "I have a business plan," I tried to explain. "I have meetings set up." Meetings don't pay the rent. The 6 months drained away faster than I expected. My car broke down, transmission failure. That cost $2,000. Then Elena needed a root canal. Another grand. The savings evaporated. I started driving for a rideshare app at night to keep cash coming in. I would code from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., eat dinner, and then drive drunks around until 2 a.m. I was exhausted. I was gray-faced and losing weight. Elena grew distant. She started staying late at work. She stopped wearing her ring when she went to happy hours with her team. Then came the eviction notice. We weren't evicted, but the landlord raised the rent by $300. We couldn't afford it. I asked her if we could downsize, maybe move to a cheaper neighborhood for a year while I got the company off the ground. That was the night she left. "I am not moving to the ghetto so you can play pretend CEO," she said. She had her bags packed before I even got home from driving. David was waiting downstairs in his car. I watched from the window as she loaded her suitcases into his trunk. He didn't even get out to help her. He just popped the trunk and waited. I was alone. The next 6 months were hell. I moved into a studio apartment that smelled like mildew. I sold my car and took the bus. I ate peanut butter sandwiches for lunch and dinner. I cut my own hair. But I had the software. I launched the beta version 3 months after she left. I got my first client 2 weeks later. It was a small trucking company, but they paid me $5,000 for a license. I stared at that check for an hour. It wasn't $1 million. But it was proof. 6 months later, I landed a regional distributor. That contract was worth $50,000 a year. I hired a developer. Then a salesperson. 2 years out, we hit our first $1 million in revenue. 3 years out, which is now, we are projected to hit $10 million. I bought a house. Not a condo. A house. I have a Tesla. I have a retirement fund. I have everything she wanted, and I have it because she left. Her leaving was the fuel. I turned my heartbreak into code. I debugged my sadness. And now, she was in my hiring queue. Part 3, the phone screen. Thursday arrived. I sat in my office with the door closed. I had access to the recording of the phone screens. We use a VoIP system that records calls for training purposes. It was perfectly legal and standard policy. I watched the audio waveform on my monitor as Sarah made the call. "Hello, this is Elena." Her voice. It sent a jolt through me that I hadn't expected. It was smoother than I remembered, perhaps a bit more tired. "Hi Elena, this is Sarah from Apex Logistics Solutions. I'm calling about your application for the Senior Account Manager position." "Yes." "Hi Sarah. Thank you so much for calling. I'm very excited about the opportunity." She sounded desperate. Not unprofessional, but there was a tightness in her throat that I recognized. It was the tone of someone who has checked their bank account balance in the grocery store parking lot before going inside. "Great," Sarah said. "I'd like to go over your background. I see here you've been with Miller & Associates for 4 years. Can you tell me why you're looking to leave?" This was the standard trap question. "I'm looking for new challenges," Elena said. Her rehearsal was obvious. "I feel I've reached the ceiling of my growth there, and I know Apex is an industry leader. I've been following your expansion, and I really admire the company culture." Liar. She didn't know the culture. She probably just saw the salary range on Glassdoor. "I see," Sarah said. "This role requires a lot of autonomy. We have a very fast-paced environment. Can you give me an example of a time you had to manage a difficult client under a tight deadline? Elena launched into a story. I remembered the story. It was from 3 years ago. She was talking about a client she handled back when we were still married. She was embellishing the details, making herself the hero. In reality, I remembered her coming home crying because she had forgotten to file a purchase order and her boss had screamed at her. In her version today, she had proactively identified a supply chain discrepancy. I listened to the whole 20-minute call. She was good. She was charming. She knew how to mirror the interviewer. This was Elena's superpower. She could make you feel like the most important person in the room if she wanted something from you. Okay, Elena, Sarah concluded. I think you have a strong profile. I'd like to bring you in for an in-person interview next week. You'd be meeting with the team lead and potentially the CEO. That would be wonderful, Elena said. I'm available anytime. Great. I'll send over the details. The call ended. I sat in the silence of my office. She didn't know. The name of my company, Apex, is generic enough. My name isn't on the website's front page. I'm listed as M.R. Evans in the legal docs, and the About Us page features the team, not me. I hate being the face of the brand. I prefer the shadows. She had no idea she was walking into the lion's den. Part 4. The preparation. I spent the weekend obsessing. I pulled her background check. It was clean criminal-wise, but the credit report, which we pull for financial roles, was a disaster. High credit card utilization. A recent address change to a much cheaper apartment complex. No joint assets listed. Where was David? I did some digging on social media. I used a burner account. Elena's Instagram used to be public, a shrine to her vanity. Now it was private. But David's was public. I scrolled back. Photos of them together started 3 years ago. Trips to Cabo. Dinners at steakhouses. The BMW. Then, about 6 months ago, the photos stopped. Then came a post from David. A photo of him with a new girl. A blonde, much younger. The caption, New Beginnings. I pieced it together. David had traded her in. He had done exactly what she did to me. He found an upgrade. The irony was so rich it tasted like expensive chocolate. Elena had left me for security and status. She got a lease on a luxury life that expired the moment her beauty started to show the first lines of age or the moment she became inconvenient. She was alone in debt, and applying for a job she needed desperately. I felt a flash of pity. It surprised me. I thought I would feel triumph. But seeing the wreckage of her life didn't make my success feel any better. It just made the past feel sadder. But then I remembered the walk of shame. I remembered the text she sent me a week after she left. Please don't contact me. I'm blocking this number. Good luck with your little project. Little project. The pity evaporated. I went into the office on Monday with a plan. I told Sarah to schedule Elena for Wednesday at 2 p.m. I won't be in the first round, I told Sarah. Have Mike and Jessica interview her first. If they like her, send her to my office for the final sign-off. You usually only interview the VPs, Sarah noted. I have a feeling about this one, I lied. Wednesday came. I wore my best suit. It was a custom-tailored Italian wool suit, charcoal gray. I wore a watch that cost more than my parents' first house. I wanted to look the part. I wanted there to be zero ambiguity about who had won the breakup. I sat in my office and watched the security feed. Elena arrived 10 minutes early. She looked good, but tired. She was wearing a suit I recognized, one she had bought when we were together. It was a bit tight now, or maybe just out of style. She sat in the waiting area, nervously checking her phone. Mike came out to greet her. They went into the conference room. I couldn't hear them, but I watched her body language. She was leaning forward, nodding too much. She was anxious. 45 minutes later, Mike came out. He walked straight to my office. She's solid, Mike said. A bit desperate, maybe, but she knows the CRM software and she has good account management instincts. Jessica liked her too. She's willing to start immediately and didn't even haggle on the salary range. Send her in, I said. My heart was hammering against my ribs. This was it. Mike left. A moment later, I saw him gesture to Elena. She stood up, smoothed her skirt, and followed him down the hall toward my glass-walled office. I turned my chair away from the door, facing the window. I wanted her to see the back of the chair first. I wanted the dramatic reveal. It was petty. It was theatrical. I didn't care. I heard the door open. "Elena, this is our CEO, Mr. Evans," Mike said. "I'll leave you two to chat." The door clicked shut. "Hello, Mr. Evans," she said. Her voice was steady, practicing her professional mask. "It's a pleasure to meet you." I waited 3 seconds. Then I spun the chair around. Part 5, the interview. The look on her face was worth every late night, every skipped meal, every moment of loneliness. It wasn't just shock. It was a total system failure of her facial features. Her jaw literally dropped. Her eyes went wide, then squinted as if she couldn't process the visual data. The color drained from her face, so fast I thought she might faint. "Mark," she whispered. I didn't smile. I leaned back in my chair and steepled my fingers. "Hello, Elena. Please, take a seat." She didn't move. She stood frozen in the center of the room, clutching her purse like a shield. I didn't know," she stammered. "Apex. I didn't know this was you." "Sit down," I said, my voice calm, authoritative. She sank into the leather guest chair. She looked small. "You're applying for the senior account manager position," I said, picking up her resume. "My team seems to think you're qualified." "Mark, I can't believe this," she said, ignoring my comment. "You, look at this place. You did it." "I did," I said. "I told you I would." She flinched. I know you did." "So," I continued, keeping it strictly professional. "Tell me about your time at Miller and Associates. Why are you leaving?" She stared at me. "Are you serious? You want to do the interview? You're here for a job, aren't you? I'm the CEO. I hire the senior staff. Unless you'd like to withdraw your application." She swallowed hard. I saw the calculation happening in her eyes. She needed this job. She needed the money. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. "No. I want the job." "Then answer the question." She took a breath. She was shaking. "My position at Miller was eliminated. Restructuring. Your resume says you're currently employed." I was let go 2 weeks ago. I haven't updated the resume yet." "Lie number 1, I said. "We verify employment dates, Elena. You know that. Why lie?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Because I'm desperate, okay? Is that what you want to hear? David left me. He took the condo. I have nothing. I'm living in a studio apartment that costs more than I make in unemployment. I have debt. I need a job." "David left you?" I asked, keeping my face neutral. The guy who lived in the real world. "Don't," she whispered. "Please don't. You told me I was a loser, Elena. You told me I was dragging you down. You left me when I was at my lowest point. You didn't just leave, you mocked me on the way out." "I was young," she sobbed. "I was stupid. Mark, I am so sorry. I have regretted that day for 3 years. Every time I saw your company in the news, every time I saw you had won an award, I felt sick. I missed you." "Did you miss me?" I asked sharply. "Or did you miss the potential payout?" "I missed you," she insisted. He was cold. He treated me like a trophy. You were my best friend." "I was your husband," I corrected. "And you threw me away like garbage." She wept openly now. It was a messy, ugly cry. I watched her for a moment. Part of me, the weak part, the part that still remembered how her hair smelled, wanted to hand her a tissue. Wanted to tell her it was okay. But the other part of me, the part that built this company, knew better. "Elena," I said. "Stop crying." She sniffled and wiped her face. "I have a business to run," I said. "I employ 40 people. Their families depend on this company. I need people I can trust. People who have grit. People who stick around when things get hard." She looked up at me, hope sparking in her eyes. I can be that. I've learned, Mark. I promise. I will work harder than anyone. Just give me a chance. You had a chance, I said. You had a chance to be a partner in this. You chose to cash out early. Please, she begged. I will take an entry-level role. I don't care. I just need a lifeline. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had broken my heart. And I realized something profound. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't love her, either. She was just a stranger with a familiar face. She was a bad investment I had written off years ago. I can't hire you, I said. The hope died in her eyes. Why? Because of the past. Yes, I said honestly. And because you're not qualified. You lied about your employment status. You have bad credit, which is a risk for an account manager handling client funds. And frankly, your presence here would be a distraction to the CEO. Mark, please. No, I said. I stood up. The interview is over. She stood up slowly. She looked defeated. She looked like a ghost. She walked to the door. Her hand hovered over the handle. Mark, she said, without turning around. I really am happy for you. You were right. I was the anchor. Then she walked out. Part 6, The Aftermath. I sat in my chair for a long time after she left. I felt drained. I didn't feel the rush of victory I expected. It just felt finished. I called Sarah. The candidate isn't a good fit, I said. Send her a standard rejection email. Okay, Sarah said. Everything all right? You sound weird. Yeah, I said. Just a long day. I went home that night to my big, empty house. I ordered Thai food and ate it at the kitchen island. I thought about Elena going back to her studio apartment. I thought about the fear in her eyes. I opened my laptop. I logged into my personal bank account. I stared at the screen for 20 minutes. Then, I did something that my friends would call stupid. I wrote a personal check for $5,000. I put it in an envelope. I didn't put a return address on it. I just wrote Elena Vance on the front. I knew her address from the background check. I drove to the post office and dropped it in the mailbox. It wasn't a get-back-together payment. It wasn't an apology. It was a severance package. It was the closure I never got. It was me proving, finally, that I was the one who took care of things. I never heard from her again. A few months later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she had moved back to her hometown in Ohio to live with her parents. She got a job at a bank there. She was doing okay. As for me, the company kept growing. We hit our $10 million target. I started dating again, a nice woman named Claire who is a pediatrician. Claire doesn't care about my money, she has her own. She likes me because I make her laugh and because I cook a mean risotto. Sometimes, when I'm driving home from work and the light hits the skyline just right, I think about that day in the living room. I think about the pain that felt like it would kill me. And I realize that the best thing Elena ever did for me wasn't loving me. It was leaving me. She broke me down so I could build myself back up, stronger, sharper, and unbreakable. Part 7, The Reflection. Looking back now with more distance, I analyze the logic of what happened. Reddit loves to talk about karma, but real life isn't usually that poetic. Karma implies a cosmic force balancing the scales. What happened to us wasn't karma, it was consequence. Elena's life fell apart because she bet on a depreciating asset, David's superficial success, instead of a growth asset, my potential. She made a short-term trade in a long-term market. I succeeded not just because I worked hard, but because I had nothing left to lose. Fear of failure vanishes when you've already lost the most important thing in your life. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had hired her. Scenario A, she works hard, we keep it professional. But every time she walks into a meeting, the power dynamic is toxic. She resents me for being her boss. I resent her for the past. The staff picks up on the tension. It poisons the culture. Scenario B, we fall back into old habits. I try to save her. She uses my guilt to get ahead. We end up in a messy office romance that destroys my credibility and exposes the company to legal liability. Scenario C, she fails at the job, and I have to fire her. Firing your ex-wife? That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. There was no winning scenario where she stayed. The check I sent? It was cheaper than a lawsuit and more effective than therapy. It was the price of a clean break. I told Claire about it a few months into our relationship. We were sitting on my deck, drinking wine. You sent her money? Claire asked, eyebrows raised. Yeah. Why? To balance the books, I said. She supported us for a while when I was first coding. It felt like paying off a final debt. Claire looked at me for a long time. Then she smiled and took a sip of her wine. You're a good man, Mark. A little weird, but good. I'm not good, I said. I'm just solvent. She laughed. I'm writing this not to brag about my money or to bash Elena. I'm writing this as a warning to anyone currently in the struggle phase. If your partner doesn't believe in you when you're broke, they don't deserve you when you're rich. It's a cliché for a reason. And to the Elenas of the world, be careful who you step on while you're climbing the ladder. You never know who you'll have to ask for a hand up when you fall. The business world is smaller than you think. Part 8, the epilogue. Last week, we hired a new senior account manager. His name is Julian. He's hungry. He reminds me of me 10 years ago. He wears cheap suits, but he prepares for meetings like he's going to war. I took him out to lunch on his first day. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I asked him. Running my own division, he said without hesitation. Or maybe running my own company. I smiled. Good answer. My phone buzzed. It was a LinkedIn notification. Elena Vance has viewed your profile. I looked at it. I didn't feel anything. No anger. No sadness. No satisfaction. I just locked the screen, put the phone in my pocket, and turned back to Julian. Let me tell you about the biggest mistake people make in this industry, I said. They undervalue loyalty. Julian nodded, taking notes. The sun was shining. The business was booming. And for the first time in a long time, the past stayed exactly where it belonged. Behind me. Part 9, detailed breakdown of the grind for those asking. I've received a lot of DMs asking about the specifics of the come-up. People want to know the technical details of how I went from sleeping on a mattress on the floor to owning a logistics empire. I glossed over it earlier, but since this is a comprehensive account, I'll break down the years between the breakup and the interview. This is for the people who are currently eating ramen and staring at a blank text editor. Year 1, the darkness. The first 4 months post-breakup were a blur of survival. My office was a corner of the studio apartment. I used a folding table I found near a dumpster. The software Logiflow, not the real name, was a mess of spaghetti code. It worked, but it was ugly. It was a Python backend with a React frontend that looked like it was designed in 1998. I woke up at 5 a.m. every day. 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., cold emails. I scraped trucking directories. I sent 100 emails a day. Subject: cut your fuel audit time by 50%. 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., coding. Fixing bugs. Adding features requested by the 3 people who actually replied to my emails. 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., driving rideshare or delivering food. I lived on $12 a day for food. I tracked every penny in a spreadsheet. The breakthrough came when I stopped trying to sell the software as a SaaS, software as a service, and started selling it as a service. I told companies, don't buy my software. Pay me a monthly retainer, and I will handle your data reconciliation for you. They didn't want to learn a new tool. They just wanted the problem solved. I used my own software to do the work for them. What took their teams 40 hours took me 2 hours with my script. I charged them for 20 hours. Arbitrage. Year 2, the scale. I had 5 clients on this consulting model. I was making $15,000 a month. I quit the driving gig. I moved out of the studio into a decent 1-bedroom. I didn't date. I didn't go out. I worked. I realized I couldn't scale the do it for them model forever. I needed them to use the software. I used the cash flow to hire a UI/UX designer on contract. We made the interface pretty. We added dashboards. Executives love dashboards. I flew to a logistics conference in Chicago. I couldn't afford a booth, So I just walked around the expo floor handing out business cards and buying drinks for operations managers at the hotel bar. I spent $3,000 on that trip. It was my last $3,000. I met a guy named Tom. Tom ran a regional distribution center for a major grocery chain. He was drunk. He complained about how much money they lost on deadhead miles, trucks driving empty. I can fix that, I told him. Bullshit, Tom said. Give me your data for last month. If I can't find you $10,000 in savings, I'll pay for your tab. He gave me the data. I ran it through my algorithm. I found $42,000 in inefficiencies. Tom signed a contract worth $120,000 a year. That was the turning point. Year 3, the explosion with Tom's logo on my website, other dominoes fell. I hired my first full-time dev. Then a sales guy. We moved into a co-working space. Then a real office. I started paying myself a real salary. I bought new clothes. I went to the dentist. This was the year I almost burned out. I was working 100-hour weeks. I developed a twitch in my left eye. I was drinking too much coffee and not sleeping. But every time I wanted to quit, I thought of Elena. I thought of David opening that trunk. Spite is a dirty fuel, but it burns hot. Part 10, The Financials of the Breakup versus. Now, since this is Reddit, let's talk numbers. Transparency helps. When Elena left, my bank account, $412 debt, $0. I paid off student loans aggressively before the layoff, which is why I had no savings. Credit score, 780, I was broke, but I paid bills on time. Assets, 2008 Honda Civic, broken, 1 laptop. Rent, $1,200, I was responsible for all of it. Elena's situation, estimated salary, $45,000. David's salary, $110,000, sales director. Their condo, $3,500 per month, David paid. Car, leased BMW 3 Series. 3 years later, the day of the interview, my net worth, $4.2 million, mostly equity valuation, but substantial cash. Liquid cash, $350,000. Salary, $180,000. I reinvest most profit into the company. Home, purchased for $850,000. 20% down. Car, Tesla Model S, paid in cash. Elena's situation, from what I gathered, salary, $0, unemployed. Debt, $25,000, credit cards. Assets, none. Housing, studio apartment, $900 per month. The math is brutal. Part 11, The Psychology of Too Broke. I've thought a lot about her specific phrasing, too broke. It wasn't just about money. It was about trajectory. She looked at me and saw a flat line. She didn't see the potential energy. There is a difference between being broke and being poor. Broke is a temporary financial state. Poor is a state of mind. I was broke. Elena was afraid of being poor. She grew up lower middle class. Her parents fought about money constantly. For her, money equaled safety. Lack of money equaled chaos. When I lost my job, I became chaos. David represented order. I don't blame her for wanting safety. Biology drives us to seek security. But I blame her for the cruelty. You can leave someone without trying to destroy them. She tried to destroy me because it made her feel justified. If I was a loser, then her leaving wasn't a betrayal, it was a rescue mission. She had to villainize me to sleep at night. Seeing me successful shattered that narrative. If I wasn't a loser, then she wasn't a victim. She was just a traitor. That's why she cried in my office. Not because she missed me, but because she realized she was the villain of her own story. Part 12. Final thoughts on hiring exes. To the people in the comments saying I should have hired her out of mercy, no. Business rule number 1. Don't shit where you eat. Business rule number 2. Hire for character, train for skill. She demonstrated a lack of character 3 years ago. She demonstrated a lack of character in the interview by lying about her employment. Hiring her would have been a dereliction of my duty to my other employees. Why should I give a high-paying job to someone who lied, just because we used to sleep together. That's nepotism, and it's toxic. I did the right thing. The check was mercy. The rejection was justice. I am currently sitting in the airport lounge, waiting for a flight to Tokyo. We are opening a satellite office there to handle trans-Pacific logistics. Claire is meeting me there on Friday for a weekend of sushi and sightseeing. Life is good. If you are reading this, and you are the Mark in this situation, keep coding. Keep grinding. Keep driving the Uber. The best revenge is a life well lived. And if you are the Elena, good luck. You're going to need it. Update. 6 months later. I didn't plan on updating this, but something happened that feels like a necessary postscript. I was at a charity gala last weekend. It was a black tie thing for a local children's hospital. Apex bought a table. I was standing at the bar, waiting for a drink, when I saw David. He looked older. He had gained weight. He was wearing a tuxedo that looked a bit tight. He saw me. He recognized me. He couldn't help it. My face had been in the local business journal recently. He walked over. He looked drunk. "Mark Evans," he said, slurping a scotch. "The logistics king." "David," I said, keeping it curt. "I heard about Elena," he said. He laughed. It was a mean sound. "She tried to get a job with you? That's rich." "She did," I said. "Crazy bitch," David said, shaking his head. "She drained me, man. Wanted trips, wanted jewelry. I had to cut her loose. She was a leech." I looked at David. I looked at this man who I used to think was better than me. "She wasn't a leech, David," I said quietly. "She was just scared. And you bought her fear. You didn't love her either. You just liked owning her." David sneered. "Whatever. You win, right? You got the money. You got the last laugh." "I don't care about winning against you, David," I said. "I don't think about you at all." I took my drink and walked away. I spotted Claire across the room. She was talking to one of my developers, laughing at something he said. She looked radiant in a blue dress. I walked over to her. I put my hand on the small of her back. She leaned into me. "Ready to go?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Let's go home." We walked out into the cool night air. The valet brought my car around. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The gala was just a glowing box of light in the distance. I turned onto the highway. I pressed the accelerator. The car surged forward, smooth and silent. I was free. Truly, finally free. Posted by U/The Silent Architect. The silence in the boardroom was heavy enough to crush a man, and right now, it was crushing Brad. 3 hours ago, he was the golden boy, the newly minted vice president of strategy, the man who claimed he single-handedly saved the Q4 portfolio with his visionary logistics algorithm. Now he was sweating through his bespoke Italian suit, staring at a spreadsheet projected on the 4K screen that he manifestly did not understand. Across the mahogany table sat Marcus Sterling, the CEO of our biggest client, a man who controls $1 billion shipping budget. Sterling looked at Brad with pure, unadulterated coldness. I sat in the back corner, invisible as always, clutching my notebook. I hadn't said a word for 45 minutes. I didn't have to. The destruction was self-sustaining. Then, Sterling turned his back on Brad, looked past the terrified executives, locked eyes with me, and asked the question I had been waiting 6 months to hear: is this the guy who actually wrote the code? To understand how we got to that moment, you have to understand the dynamic between Brad and me. I am a senior solutions architect. I build things. I take complex, messy data streams and turn them into streamlined, automated cash cows for logistics companies. I am good at my job, but I am terrible at playing the game. I hate networking. I hate golf. I hate the performative buzzing around the coffee machine where people talk about synergy. I just want to code, optimize, and go home to my dog. Brad was the opposite. Brad was hired 2 years ago as a team lead, though I never saw him lead anything other than the march to the bar at 5 p.m. Brad was handsome, tall, and possessed that specific kind of corporate charisma that allows you to say absolutely nothing of substance while sounding like a genius. He used words like holistic, paradigm, and drill down as punctuation. He was my direct manager. For the first 18 months, our relationship was symbiotic. I did the work, Brad sold the work. I was fine with this arrangement. I didn't want to present to the board. I didn't want to fly to Zurich for client dinners. I wanted to solve logic puzzles. As long as I got my bonuses and my performance reviews were good, I didn't care that Brad took the spotlight. Then came Project Helios. Project Helios was my baby. It was a predictive shipping model designed to save our largest client, Sterling Logistics, roughly 12% on fuel costs by utilizing historical traffic patterns and weather data. It was complex. It took me 6 months of 80-hour weeks. I missed my sister's birthday dinner. I missed my own anniversary dinner. I lived on caffeine and vending machine sandwiches. Brad was supervising, which meant he would pop his head into my office twice a week and ask, "Are we winning, champ?" before disappearing to a 3-hour lunch. 2 weeks before the final presentation to the internal executive board, the presentation that would determine funding for the next fiscal year, Brad asked me to send him all the documentation. The source code, the white papers, the slide decks, the logic trees. He said he needed to polish the formatting to make sure it aligned with the new corporate branding. I sent it all. I trusted him. That was my first mistake. The day of the presentation arrived. I walked into the conference room, ready to support Brad. I expected to answer the technical questions while he did the intro and outro. I took a seat near the front. Brad walked in. He didn't look at me. He plugged in his laptop and pulled up the title slide. Project Helios, a strategic initiative by Bradley P. Morton. My name wasn't on the title slide. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I figured it was an oversight. A typo. I waited for the second slide, the team acknowledgements. It wasn't there. Brad began to speak. He didn't say we. He didn't say the team. He said I. I noticed a gap in the market, Brad said, gesturing smoothly to the graphs I had generated 3 nights ago at 4 a.m. I realized that if we applied a nonlinear regression model to the fuel data, we could optimize the routes. I spent months refining this algorithm. I sat there, frozen. It was an out-of-body experience. He was reciting my email updates verbatim. He was claiming my sleepless nights as his own strategic genius. The executives were eating it up. The CEO was nodding, looking at Brad like he was the second coming of Steve Jobs. I looked at Brad. He finally made eye contact with me. He didn't look guilty. He looked right through me, as if I were a piece of furniture, a chair, a lamp, a resource. When the Q&A session started, the CTO asked a technical question about the API latency. It was a softball question. Brad froze for a millisecond, then smiled. "That's a great question, Dave. It gets into the weeds a bit, but essentially, I optimized the backend to handle the load. Next question." He deflected. He didn't know the answer. I did. The latency was handled by a custom caching layer I wrote. I opened my mouth to speak, to correct the record, to claim my work. Then I closed it. I looked around the room. The CEO was smiling at Brad. The VP of sales was high-fiving the air. If I spoke up now, I wouldn't look like the victim. I would look like the jealous subordinate trying to steal the thunder of the company's new star. I would look petty. I would be the difficult engineer. So I stayed silent. 2 days later, the company-wide email went out. Brad was promoted to Vice President of Strategy. He got a corner office. He got a significant raise. He got a company car. I got a calendar invite for a performance review with Brad. I walked into his new office. It smelled of fresh paint and expensive cologne. He didn't stand up to shake my hand. He gestured to the chair opposite his massive desk. "Mark, good to see you," he said, smiling that winning smile. "Look, I know you're probably feeling a little left out regarding Helios." "My name wasn't on the deck, Brad," I said. My voice was steady, which surprised me. I know, he waved a hand dismissively. "Politics, Mark. The board wants to see leadership vision. If I put the whole team on the slide, it dilutes the message. But hey, I know who did the heavy lifting. And I'm going to take care of you." He slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a letter informing me of a cost of living adjustment. 3%. That's it. I asked. "Budgets are tight, Mark. Now that I'm VP, I have to look at the bottom line. But hey, Keep up the good work, and maybe next year we can talk about a senior lead title. You utilized my work to get a promotion that pays you double my salary, I said. Brad's smile vanished. His eyes hardened. I utilized my team's resources to secure a win for the company. That is my job. Your job is to write code. Stay in your lane, Mark. You're a great coder, but you're not management material. You lack the presence. I stood up. I took the paper. Understood. I walked out of his office. I didn't slam the door. I didn't go to HR. I didn't complain to my coworkers. I went back to my desk, and I made a decision. Brad wanted me to stay in my lane? Fine. I would stay in my lane. I would stay so perfectly rigidly in my lane that he wouldn't realize he was driving off a cliff until he hit the ground. This is where the malicious compliance began. Previously, I did a lot of things that weren't strictly in my job description. I proofread Brad's emails for technical accuracy. I sat in on meetings to translate his buzzwords into actual requirements for the junior devs. I patched servers on weekends because I got the alert and didn't want to wait for IT. I anticipated problems before they happened and fixed them. I stopped doing all of that immediately. I worked exactly 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Not a minute more. The first crack appeared 3 weeks later. Brad was scheduled to give a status update to the internal stakeholders on the rollout of Helios. Usually, I would prepare the slide deck for him, complete with updated metrics and progress bars. 3 days before the meeting, Brad sent me an email. From Brad to Mark, subject, deck for Friday. Hey Mark, shoot over the updated slides for the Friday sync. Keep it punchy. I replied immediately. From Mark to Brad, subject, re-deck for Friday. Hi Brad, per my job description attached, creating executive slide decks falls under the responsibilities of the project manager or department head. As a solutions architect, my focus is on code base integrity and system architecture. I do not have the access rights or the allocated hours to create marketing materials. I waited. Brad came storming over to my desk 10 minutes later. Mark, what is this? Just make the slides. You always make the slides. I used to make the slides as a favor, Brad, I said, not looking away from my monitor. But you told me to stay in my lane. My lane is code. If I spend time on PowerPoint, I won't meet my sprint goals for the back-end integration. You emphasized the bottom line, remember? He turned red. He couldn't order me to do it because technically, I was right. HR had very specific role descriptions. He huffed and walked away. The Friday presentation was a disaster. Brad made the slides himself. They were ugly, full of formatting errors, and worst of all, the data was wrong. He confused latency with throughput. He promised features that we hadn't even started building. I sat in the meeting, taking notes. When he looked at me for backup, I just stared at my notebook. After the meeting, the CTO stopped by my desk. Mark, is the throughput really up to 10 terabytes? No, I said simply. It's 10 gigabytes. Brad misspoke. The CTO frowned. He said you vetted the numbers. I haven't seen that deck until today, I said. I can send you the actual server logs if you like. Please do. That was the first strike. The second strike was the integration with the legacy systems. Sterling Logistics, our client, used an ancient inventory system from the early 2000s. Connecting our modern Helios system to their dinosaur mainframe was the technical equivalent of performing open heart surgery with a spoon. It required constant monitoring. In the past, I handled the handshake protocol manually. I checked the error logs every morning. If the legacy system burped, I reset the connection before the client even noticed. Now, I only engaged when a ticket was filed. A week later, the connection dropped at 2 a.m. on a Saturday. Usually, I would get the alert on my phone, log in, and fix it in 5 minutes. This time, I looked at the notification, swiped it away, and went back to sleep. I am not on call. My contract states standard business hours. By Monday morning, the data backlog was massive. Sterling Logistics hadn't received their shipping manifest updates for 48 hours. Their trucks were sitting idle at distribution centers across the Midwest. My phone rang at 9:01 a.m. It was Brad. Mark. Why is the system down? Sterling is screaming at me. I see a ticket came in at 8:55 a.m. today, I said calmly. I'm looking at it now. It's been down since Saturday. Why didn't you fix it? I don't work weekends, Brad. You know that. Unless authorized for overtime by a VP. I am a VP. Fix it. I am fixing it now. It will take about 4 hours to clear the backlog. 4 hours? They need it now. If it had been caught on Saturday, it would have been 5 minutes. But since the data piled up, the database has to re-index. It's a technical constraint. Nothing I can do to speed it up. Brad slammed the phone down. I cleared the backlog by 1 p.m. During that time, Brad had to send 3 apology emails to Sterling. He tried to blame the engineering team, but the logs clearly showed the error occurred during off hours when no support staff was scheduled, a scheduling oversight that fell directly on the department head. Brad. The final setup, the death blow, came 2 months later. Sterling Logistics wanted a custom feature. They wanted Project Helios to integrate with a third-party weather tracking system they had just acquired. They wanted a live demo of this integration at their quarterly summit. The summit was a big deal. The CEO of Sterling, Marcus Sterling, would be there. Our CEO would be there. Brad accepted the request without consulting me. He promised them the moon. He promised full integration, real-time rerouting, and a 3D visualization map. He told me about it 4 weeks before the deadline. We need this, Mark, Brad said, sweating a little. This is the big show. If we nail this, we renew the contract for 5 years. That API isn't compatible with our stack, I said immediately. The third-party weather system uses XML. We use JSON. We need a middleware translator. It takes 6 weeks to build and test properly. You have 4 weeks, Brad said. Make it happen. Just patch it together. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to work for the demo. I can write a patch, I said slowly. But it will be unstable. If the data volume spikes, the middleware will crash. It's not production ready. Just do it, Mark. I don't need problems, I need solutions. That's why you're the architect. I will put my concerns in an email, I said. Fine, whatever. Just build it. I wrote the email. I was very specific. To Brad from Mark, subject, risk assessment for Sterling demo integration. Brad, regarding the requested integration, using a direct patch without a dedicated middleware server creates a high risk of system failure. If the request volume exceeds 500 calls per minute, which is likely during a live demo with real-time map rendering, the bridge will likely time out. I strongly recommend we use a pre-recorded video for the visualization portion of the demo to ensure stability. Proceeding with a live integration is against my technical recommendation. Brad replied, Mark, we are doing it live. Sterling hates canned demos. Stop being a pessimist and get it done. I printed both emails. I put them in my backpack. I built exactly what he asked for. I built a fragile, direct bridge. It worked perfectly with low data. It was fast, it was sleek, and it was completely incapable of handling a stress load. The day of the summit arrived. It was held in a massive hotel ballroom. Projectors, catered lunch, the works. I was there as technical support, sitting in the back. Brad was on stage, looking brilliant. He went through the slides. He was charming. He made the executives laugh. He talked about synergy and seamless integration. Then came the live demo. And now, Brad said, gesturing to the screen, I'm going to show you Helios in action. We are going to pull live weather data from your new system and reroute a fleet of 50 trucks in real time. He clicked the button. The map loaded. The crowd oohed. Now, watch as I simulate a storm front in the Midwest, Brad said. He dragged a slider. The system sent the request. The weather system responded. The data poured in. The requests hit 200 per minute. The system held. 300. 400. Brad was grinning. Look at that speed. That's the Helios advantage. He zoomed in on the map. This forced the system to render individual truck routes. The request count spiked. 600 calls per minute. The screen froze. Brad clicked the mouse. Nothing happened. Just a little network lag, Brad said, a nervous chuckle escaping him. The loading icon spun. And spun. And spun. Then, the error message appeared. It wasn't a small pop-up. Because the system was in presentation mode, the error was projected in massive, red 72-point font across the 20-foot screen. Critical exception, middleware timeout. Memory overflow. System halted. The room went silent. Brad frantically hit escape. 1 second, folks. Just a glitch. He tried to reload. The backend had crashed completely. It needed a hard reboot. It wasn't coming back. Marcus Sterling stood up. He was a terrifying man. He didn't yell. He just pointed at the screen. Brad, you told me this was fully integrated. You told me this was stress-tested. It is. It is. Brad stammered. It's just, the Wi-Fi in here is spotty. That's a server timeout, not a Wi-Fi issue, Sterling said. He knew just enough tech to be dangerous. You said you built this architecture yourself. Why is it failing? Brad looked around wildly. He looked for a scapegoat. He saw me in the back. Mark. Brad shouted, pointing at me. Mark, what did you do to the code? Every head in the room turned to me. The CEO of my company, the CEO of Sterling, Brad, the board. This was the moment. I stood up slowly. I walked toward the front of the room. I didn't look scared. I looked disappointed. Brad, I said, my voice carrying clearly in the silent room. The code is doing exactly what I told you it would do. Fix it. Brad screamed. I can't fix physics, Brad, I said. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the printed emails. I walked over to Marcus Sterling. I didn't hand them to Brad. I handed them to the client. Mr. Sterling, I said. 4 weeks ago, I informed Brad via email that a live integration without a 6-week build time would result in a crash if the data exceeded 500 calls per minute. Brad instructed me in writing to ignore the safety protocols and just patch it together because you hate canned demos. Sterling took the emails. He read them. His face turned a shade of purple that was actually quite impressive. He looked at the date stamps. He looked at Brad's reply, stop being a pessimist and get it done. Sterling looked up at Brad. You overruled your lead architect's safety warning? For a demo. I was trying to show ambition, Brad stammered. Mark is he's risk-averse. I'm the visionary. You're a liar, Sterling said quietly. Sterling turned to my CEO. Is this true? Did this man take credit for the Helios architecture? My CEO looked at the emails over Sterling's shoulder. He looked at Brad, who was now trembling. It appears there has been a miscommunication regarding the chain of command, my CEO said, trying to do damage control. Sterling ignored him. He looked at me. Can you fix this? Sterling asked me. Not the demo. The actual system. Can you make it work the way he promised? Yes, I said. But I need 6 weeks. And I need full control. No interference. No polishing the slides. Sterling nodded. Then he dropped the bomb. I am freezing our contract renewal, Sterling announced to the room. Until this man, he pointed at me, is the primary point of contact. I don't want to talk to Brad. I don't want to see Brad. If Brad is in the room, I am leaving. He looked at Brad one last time. You don't have vision, son. You have a gambling addiction with my money. Sterling walked out. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Brad was placed on immediate administrative leave. The investigation that followed uncovered everything. The HR logs of my complaints. The server logs showing his lack of access. The history of him overriding technical warnings. He was fired 3 days later for gross negligence and reputational damage. My CEO called me into his office the following Monday. He looked tired. Mark, he said, we're in a tight spot with Sterling. I know, I said. We need you to take over the account. Interim VP of Strategy. No, I said. The CEO blinked. Excuse me. I don't want to be VP of Strategy. I don't want to wear a suit. I don't want to play golf. Then what do you want? Name your price. I want the title of Chief Technical Architect, I said. I want a 40% raise. I want a dedicated team of 3 junior devs who answer only to me. And I want it in writing that I never have to make a PowerPoint presentation again. The CEO signed the paper right there. It's been 6 months. The integration works perfectly. Sterling is happy. I report directly to the CTO. Last week, I heard Brad got a job at a startup selling NFTs. I stayed in my lane, just like he asked. It turns out, my lane was the only one that wasn't heading off a cliff. Edit. A lot of people are asking if I felt bad for humiliating him in public. No. He humiliated me when he erased my name from my own life's work. I just returned the favor with data. Edit 2. The Project Helios name was actually my idea too. Brad wanted to call it the Logistics Maximizer. Bullet dodged there. TLDR, boss stole credit for my massive project, got promoted, and told me to shut up. I stopped fixing his mistakes and let him force a live demo of a feature I warned him would crash. It